Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Multnomah County Board of Commissioners. Audience members, I want to start by asking you to please silence your electronic devices. I would also like to remind you that in addition to the audience in this room, we have people watching and listening online, so please consider your language in comments and testimony today. Today's meeting is a hybrid board meeting. Some presenters and guests will appear in person and some will appear virtually. For those presenting virtually, please mute your mic when not speaking, and when presenting, make sure to unmute your mic and turn on your camera. For those joining us in person to provide public testimony or to present, please turn your mic on when you begin speaking and off when you've completed your remarks. And for all presenters, please state your name for the record before speaking or responding to questions. May I have a motion on the consent calendar? Second. Commissioner Jones-Dickson moves. Commissioner Singleton seconds. Approval of the consent calendar. All those in favor? Aye. All right, the consent calendar is approved.
Opportunity for, before we move on, I'd just like to ask that an issue was raised about an item on the consent agenda that board offices be informed what the outcome of the issue that was raised among the commissioners.
Absolutely, and I know that Tracy sent an email yesterday saying that there will be more information forthcoming and we will make sure that the board is updated.
I mean, recognizing the chair as the chief personnel officer and responsible for ensuring that our personnel rules are followed. But again, I would ask the commission, just as an informational item, you provide a follow-up.
Yes, we definitely will do that. Great, thank you.
Opportunity for public comment on non-agenda matters. This is a time for the board to hear public testimony, not for board deliberation. When it is your turn to speak, I will call your name and unmute you or call you to the presenter's table. I will set a timer for 3 minutes when you begin speaking and announce when your time is up, at which point please wrap up your sentence. We have 6 people signed up for verbal testimony and received 3 written testimonies which were shared with board members and staff. The first people up are Dr. Elna Hall, Michael Hanna, Jackie Tate, and Les Poole.
Good morning, and folks if you're ready to begin, please go ahead.
Okay, good morning, Madam Chair, and good morning to the whole commission. Really appreciate this opportunity to introduce myself to you all. I'm Sharif Elnahal. I'm the new president at the Oregon Health and Science University. Really important collaborators with the county on extremely important matters of concern to your constituents, including service and collaboration on houseless individuals, working to make progress on the mental health epidemic here in the county and across the state, and many other partnerships, including our partnership with the Portland State University School of Public Health, and on so many other matters. And although I'm new, this important collaboration has been reinforced to me by my team over and over again, how well we work with the county, and that of course starts with leadership. And so of course I want to express my appreciation to you all for that. And we're all very obviously heavily impacted by many of the decisions recently from the federal government, everything from funding to rhetoric to concerns that the constituents you have bring to us at OHSU, and we're in the middle of that. And I just want to tell you that as a publicly accountable university with a governor-appointed board, defined by state statute, our missions are healthcare, education, and research, but our missions are also to collaborate effectively with you to serve the public here. And so we are going through a number of challenges now, as many public institutions are, including financial challenges, but know that we are at the table in good faith with all of our labor partners who have been negotiating in good faith with us, and for that I'm much appreciative. Again, many of your constituents as part of those groups. And you might hear about us a lot, very frequently in the news, and so I want you, all of you, to feel free to call me to address any concerns that come up, but to also celebrate the wins that we've been able to achieve despite a lot of these challenges and headwinds, including securing a $2 billion gift at the behest of the Knight family, the incredible generosity that's going to allow us to build the Cancer Center of the future. And if I have anything to do with it, the best cancer center in the country, right here in Oregon. That's what we can do, and it's what we will do with this historic investment. And also the research dollars that we bring in support our scientists, but they also create thousands of jobs and contribute meaningfully to the economy here and to the livelihood of your constituents. And so I really look forward to getting together with many of you in the coming months and just appreciate the audience today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We appreciate the time for you coming today. It's great to hear from you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Good morning. Please, whoever's ready can begin. And just don't forget to hit the green button.
Got
There
it.
you go. Perfect.
Sorry, I'm a little rusty. I haven't done testimony for a little while. Hello, everyone. Good morning, Chair Vega-Peterson, Commissioners, and County Leadership. My name is Michael Hanna. I've been a Multnomah County employee for 24 years and serve as a union steward with AFSCME Local 88 and former Local 88 president. This is current president, Jackie Tate. In my last board testimony when I was here, I was before the board to advocate for a publicly owned internet utility, which was a great idea, but we just weren't ready to be as cool as other government agencies on that one, and that's fine. During that testimony, myself and my deaf friend kept saying the F word Comcast, which we thought was hilarious, as we would sign it, he would sign it, and I would speak it aloud. But County Attorney Jenny Madcower gave me the sternest look I've ever seen from her, so rest assured there'll be no swearing in this boardroom from me going forward. I'm here today to speak as a concerned employee, resident, and representative of the values of transparency, accountable, and ethical governance that county workers and residents alike expect from our leadership. First, I'd like to briefly address the budget modification DCA 00426, which Commissioner Brim Edwards raised this morning, which includes the reclassification of the currently Deputy CIO, promoting him to Chief Information Officer. I strongly urge the board to remove this item from the consent agenda. That's passed. I get it. You can't do that. That's fine. And instead direct the Department of County Assets to conduct a nationwide recruitment for this vital leadership role. I've sent all of you an email yesterday with full details on this matter. It raises serious concerns about judgment and ethical oversight within our IT division, with questions of favoritism, promotions, misuse of authority. The department's failure to mitigate this conflict or communicate transparently about the steps taken reflects a breakdown in ethical safeguards. But I get it. My department director is the deputy COO. You all have to just follow the protocol. That's fine. Furthermore, this issue intersects with a larger structural concern, the misuse of public resources through poor management design. As part of our countywide span of control project, which we're kicking off, and I'm the lead for Local 88, the IT enterprise architecture team has been identified by Local 88 as one of the most egregious examples of misuse of tax dollars. This team was created this fiscal year by our deputy CIO at a time when we were cutting direct services to residents, and it has a current span of control of 1.5 direct reports per manager. Basically 4 managers and 6 direct reports, which I don't know anyone thinks that's okay. It's far below our union's proposed minimum of 1 to 4 at the team level and 1 to 11 at the division level, which aligns with ORS 291.227, the same benchmark used for state agencies. In a time of constrained budgets and service cuts, it is indefensible to maintain leadership structures that concentrate resources in high-level management roles that do not deliver proportional value to the public. This is not about personalities, it's about public trust, fiscal responsibility, and ethical leadership. Therefore, I respectfully request that the board remove the item. You can't do it, I get it, that's fine. This is the start of a longer conversation. Thank you for your time, and we'll continue to be continued. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Vega-Peterson, Commissioners, and County Leadership. My name is Jackie Tate. I'm the elected president of AFSCME Local 88, representing over 4,000 workers in Multnomah County, including those who provide critical direct services to the public. I'm here today to speak in support of a fiscally responsible, equitable, and service-centered reform, the implementation of a countywide span of control policy. Span of control, or how many staff report to each manager, is not just an HR metric. It's a reflection of our priorities. It's a question of how much of our limited budget we invest in those who deliver services to the public versus how much we concentrate in layers of management. While frontline jobs are being eliminated or frozen, Multnomah County added a net of 2 new manager positions in FY26. At the same time, dozens of Local 88 represented jobs were cut, and essential services from behavioral health to housing supports, library programming were impacted. This trend is out of alignment with our values and our fiscal reality. Ask Me Local 88 proposes a phased countywide span of control policy aligned with best practices and consistent with state benchmarks such as ORS 291.227, which sets a minimum of 1 to 11 manager to staff ratio for state agencies. Our proposal is simple and realistic. By January 1, 2026, no manager at Multnomah County should supervise less than 4 direct reports. No team should have a management to staff ratio lower than 1 to 4. By July 1 of 2026, no county division should fall below an average of 1 to 11 ratio of management to staff. These are not extreme standards. They reflect norms in state government, in well-run public organizations, and in fact, Oregon AFSCME worked to pass legislation that required any public agency receiving funding comply with ORS 291.227. And we believe Multnomah County should lead, not lag, in this movement. This is not about eliminating managers. It's about right-sizing our workforce and ensuring the best use of tax dollars, especially in times of scarcity, and we know that that is where we are at. We believe strongly that residents are best served when more of the budget goes towards services, not bureaucracy. Span of control policy also helps address pay equity, morale, and workload balance across teams. AFSCME Local 88 is ready to work in partnerships with the board, the central HR, and with DCM to implement this policy in a thoughtful and transparent way. Let's be a statewide model for smart, ethical, and service-focused governance. Thank you all.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here. I will just remind the board and the public that we, thanks to a budget note, I believe, from Commissioner Moyer, there is a span of control report coming from the CO's office that is due in January. And so I would love to have conversations to talk about how we can bring some of the things that you mentioned into that for report out.
And I appreciate that, Chair. And I think we see an urgency because we're going into next budget and we're looking at potential layoffs. And so we really feel like this policy is important now and, not at some, way off time in the future. It matters if we want to keep staff and we want to keep services.
Thank you so much.
Next up, we have Injured and Pissed Off and Lightning.
Good morning.
Good morning. City of Portland, injured and pissed off, 6 words. If you use those 6 words on Google, it brings up 7 links at the top of the screen that address me. And the first one, if you click on it, some reason it froze. If you click on the first link, it talks about that there was a public communication yesterday at City Hall, and that didn't even happen. I was signed up and everything, and they canceled the meeting, and Google has it up that it was a public meeting that was held, and there was 4 other speakers that didn't exist or happen. I'm to talk at City Hall, December 3rd, Willamette Week uninvited guest, 4 words again. If you look that up on Google, it has an article, but it doesn't have a picture of me and my service animal. My service animal was very distinctive. In fact, it was just plain out a Dalmatian lab mix It was colored as a Dalmatian but built as a lab, and of course it was a real service animal, and the dog before him was an assistance animal, Oregon state law assistance animal, and the service animals are supposed to be federal law, and they're supposed to enforce the law enforcement for the injuries of them. And I have some other papers here from care workers and things, and in fact one apparently is supposed to be at my apartment or at the Banfield Studios right now, and I wanted to talk here rather than meet with the person, which I'm sorry for missing the appointment. I hope she isn't pissed off, but I felt it been more important to get these legal issues out of the way. Being able to talk publicly about my mistreatment and spinal cord injuries, and of course, well, I have memory, but I can't even read some of these pages here at all. This one here is rather explicit, but thank you. I leave these papers here.
Yes, we'll make sure that the board clerk receives them. Thank you. Thank you, Dorothy. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super We the People Labs X1, X7, X33, 33. Now, from my position, I want to declare Multnomah County and Portland a war-torn city, county, in shambles, in pieces. Property values have plummeted. You saw what the PacWest Center sold for, $55 million. Originally sold in, I think, 99, possibly 175 million. They put another 45 million into it. So we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars of losses in these buildings. So to President Trump, as the President of the United States, you did declare and agree with me on that. We are a war-torn city and county. Now, that being stated, sir, when you make that declaration, and none of these politicians picked up on that, I'm asking for emergency federal funding immediately to be brought into Multnomah County and Portland for all the losses suffered. I'm asking for you to bring in $25 billion into Multnomah County and Portland. Again, you made the declaration, stand by what you say, and now deliver the emergency funding immediately. Thank you so much, sir. That is your job as the President of the United States. Issue number 2, again, on the Blazers, my good friends at the Blazers, I'm more concerned with Tom Dundon and Jody Allen, and I disagree with Jody Allen that there shouldn't be a price reduction. In my opinion, Jody Allen, I think there should be a 50% price reduction from $4.2 billion down to about $2 billion. And again, to avoid that price reduction, I'm recommending that you agree to finance the new arena. And again, Tom Dundon can pay you back over time. And again, I want to have the naming rights given to you on who you want to name that after. Who you want to name that after. And again, that's just good business. That's just good business. Tom Dundon has been thrown into a volcano here. In my opinion, he should just run from this deal. Run as fast as you can. But he's going to stand here because this is what he does. He's a risk taker. He's an investor. He knows how to pull the money in. He's got a lot of people counting on him to end up with this basketball team. Again, Jody Allen, drop it down to $2 billion and/or just agree to finance the new arena and have that paid over time from Tom Dundon, and I think that's a sweet way to hold your price, to keep your price that you want to hold. And again, $4.2 billion with the new arena financed by Jody Allen. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
That's all for public testimony.
All right.
So
We can move on to R1. Thank you.
Resolution declaring Suite 277 in the Multnomah Building located at 501 Southeast Hawthorne Boulevard, Portland, Oregon as surplus, and approving a lease extension with Voya to occupy that space.
May I have a motion? Commissioner Singleton moves, Commissioner Brim Edwards seconds, approval of R1. All right, good morning.
Good morning.
So we have DCA here today to talk about this resolution, so I will turn it over to you. Hi, Joy.
Hi, good morning, Chair Vega, Peterson, and Commissioners. My name is Joy Heineke. I am the Leasing Specialist Senior for Facilities and Property Management. It's a division within the Department of County Assets. We're here today to seek your approval to declare a portion of the Multnomah Building, specifically Suite 277, surplus, and also approve a lease extension with Voya to occupy that space. I'll go ahead now and, oh. What did I do? You're fine. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to my colleague, John Ponanen, from County Facilities and Property Management. Next slide, please.
Good morning, Chair Vega Peterson and Commissioners. My name is John Ponanen, he, him pronouns. I'm the Facilities Planner and Space Planning Analyst for County Facilities and Property Management, a division within Department of County Assets. It's good to be with you today. The Multnomah Building includes a variety of office space for elected officials and administrative divisions, and includes the Board of Commissioners boardroom where we sit today. The first floor of the building offers multi-stall gendered restrooms, but lacks an all-gender option for public use. The board approved a one-time only offer, number 78255 in FY26's adopted budget, which includes design and construction services to convert Suite 109 adjacent to the boardroom into an all-gender, ADA accessible single-stall restroom. The renovations will provide an equitable and accessible option for county staff and the public. Next slide, please. So Suite 109 is currently occupied by Voya. It's approximately 108 square feet and is used for meetings with county staff. Voya agreed to relocate to Suite 277, which is approximately 197 square feet on the Multnomah Building second floor, which is not needed for any other county use. The space is not assigned to any county department, office, or program and is infrequently used as meeting space. Next slide, please. So we have a couple of partial floor plans for illustrative purposes to identify the locations discussed today. The partial floor plan on the left of the slide is existing Suite 109, highlighted in blue, located just outside the boardroom doors. The partial floor plan on the right is Suite 277, also highlighted in blue. It is located on the west side of the second floor, adjacent to the elevator lobby. Next slide, please. And now I'll hand it over to Joy, who will talk about the Fact 3 and the lease.
So this matter comes to the board pursuant to the Administrative Procedure Fact 3. It establishes the county's policy for declaring property surplus, leasing surplus county real property to a non-county tenant, and approving a real property lease with Voya to occupy that space. This basically amendment will have the same terms and conditions. The only difference is it will have a small increase in square footage. Next slide, please. The new space in Suite 277, it's located on the second floor of the Multnomah Building. It's approximately 197 square feet, and it will commence on or before January 1st, 2026. The lease will automatically renew for 5 one-year terms, consecutive terms, and that would be provided that the tenant is still providing services to Multnomah County, and that is outlined in a separate services agreement. Either party has the right to terminate the lease with 15 days written notice to the other party, and the current lease rate is $39 a square foot, which breaks down to $351 a month. The new rate increased by 4% to $41 a square foot, or $665 a month. The increase is due to the 4% annual escalation rate and also a combination of the increased square footage. All the other terms and conditions remain the same, and again, that includes that 4% annual escalation rate. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to John for the recommendation. Next slide, please.
So following Administrative Procedure Fact 3, Multnomah County Facilities and Property Management has determined the space is not needed for use by Multnomah County and is appropriate to be declared surplus. Per Fact 3, the Board of County Commissioners is required to declare property surplus before it can be offered for lease. We are now happy to answer any questions y'all have.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate the work that went into this in the proposal today. And I just want to acknowledge Commissioner Moyer for the budget amendment that brought this forward and our chance to really add this accessibility to our facilities in the building. We'll go to the board for questions on this. Oh, let me check first. Was there any public testimony on this item, Tasia?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have one person signed up.
Okay, so we're going to have public testimony first, and then we'll invite you back up for questions.
Lightning.
Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super We the People Lab, X1, X7, X3333. One of the questions I have, I guess, to the people doing the presentation is that on Suite 277, do you have records of how many times that was used per week or per month or per year? And by who might be using that? Is that more Multnomah County staff, or could that possibly be used by the general public? I don't know. But you didn't really get into that issue on who has used that in the past. Who's going to lose that opportunity to use that space? Now, again, I don't have any issues on what they're doing on the bathrooms or them transferring to another location in the building. I just have an issue on who might be losing that potential opportunity to use the space. That's what I want to have just a clear understanding to maybe cover that area. Now, when we get into the surplus property aspect of a lease itself or a building itself, again, I want to make it very clear from my position. I think Multnomah County owns too much real estate. And I really think you should sell off, obviously, any surplus properties, the buildings themselves, but also even this building here. I think we have a lot of investors out there that would love to do a sale leaseback on this building. Let's say we could get 50 to 100 million for it, and we do a sale leaseback, and you don't have to move, and all that money comes right back into the county immediately. The investors get a great return. Everybody should be happy, and then you can opt to buy back at a certain date. So what we're doing is we're just bringing a lot of the money back into the county immediately. You're not losing anything, and you're making a lot of investors happy. And then again, you can have more money for the homeless. We could actually end homelessness if we began to do that on several buildings. We would end it in the county and the city by doing sale leasebacks. Now, I would love to be in the middle of the sale leaseback on City Hall. I've got some people that would love to get in that deal, and I will be in that deal. And the reality is, because I'll be putting it together and I automatically take a 5 to 7% interest, and on 100 million, that's about 5 to 10 million right off the get-go. Now, so you understand that right up front, is that we would again be able to roll back the money into the city, roll back the money into the county. We would end homelessness. There'd be no homelessness. Everyone would have a place to live. With probably 2 or 3 separate buildings, maybe 4 to 5, and you lose nothing. But you haven't done that. You haven't done it. Think about it, end homelessness, and do your jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'd invite our folks from DCA to come back up so we can go to the board for any questions or comments. I'm going to start with Commissioner Moyer. Commissioner Singleton.
No questions, just want to appreciate as well Commissioner Moyer for bringing this forward and for this odd and quirky step that is just a part of our process. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions? Commissioner Brim Edwards?
Nope.
Commissioner, all right, thank you. I don't have any questions. Again, just thank you for this work and doing it as quickly as possible so that we can get moving on this project. We're very excited about it. All right, thank you. Tasia, can we have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Moyer?
Aye.
Commissioner Singleton?
Yes.
Commissioner Brim Edwards?
Yes?
Commissioner Jones-Dixon?
Yes.
Chair Vega Peterson?
Yes, the resolution is approved. All right.
R2, emergency appropriation to support food security and hunger relief resources.
So Tasia, can you hold on for 1 second on this one? So because this is the budget modification I am bringing forward, I cannot hold the gavel during the conversation, so I'm going to pass it over to Commissioner Brim Edwards. I understand that Commissioner Brim Edwards has an amendment, and so when we get to the amendment part, it's going to be passed back to me. So that is the process. Thank you, Jenny Madko, for your guidance on that. All right, thank you, Tasia.
Can I have a motion in a second?
It's been moved and seconded. Would you like to speak to your proposal?
Yes, thank you so much. So I'm bringing forward this budget modification for the board's consideration today. The budget modification builds on and continues the discussions that we've had as a board around county action to support our community during the ongoing federal government shutdown, in particularly the acute economic impacts of suspended SNAP food benefits. As the board knows, nearly 1 in 5 people across Multnomah County relies on SNAP to help buy groceries. That includes over 38,000 children and 18,000 older adults, as well as thousands of veterans and people with disabilities. SNAP is absolutely a lifeline for families in Multnomah County. And we also know that our existing food security and hunger relief organizations cannot fill the gap created by the loss of SNAP benefits. I've heard these concerns directly from a meeting with Sun School providers last week, and from staff from my team have heard the same when they visited the county's Bienestar de la Familia yesterday for their monthly mercado. Both of these providers rely on the Oregon Food Bank to sustain their food pantries, and many of the Bienestar staff stress that this is the least amount of food they've ever seen in their time here. While we cannot possibly pick up the slack for the federal government, what we can do is convene, partner, and drive collective action to support our community. And we can make targeted, strategic investments in areas where our community needs it the most. I heard that loud and clear from each of my colleagues in this board last week during our special meeting to address this topic. This budget modification would allocate $100,000 from our general fund contingency to support food security and hunger relief. This funding could provide a strategic investment to address targeted gaps, for example, in the supply of culturally specific food, or direct funding to food system partners who can maximize the purchasing power of additional dollars and other focused capacity needs. We see our partners around this region. For instance, the state has given $5 million, Clackamas County has allocated $100,000, Washington County $250,000 for food specifically, Metro has allocated $500,000. They're all making similar investments, and I think it is only through our collective action that we can address the enormous need created by the cruel action of our federal administration. My goal with this funding is to provide both resources to take advantage of the larger food bank's buying power while providing flexibility to respond to specific needs throughout the county. The proposed specifics means that existing food security and hunger relief organizations we know are not resourced to fill the gaps created by the loss of SNAP benefits, even when partially funded. These services are already undersourced, highly sought out, and struggling to meet the existing needs of households across the county. The Emergency Operations Center is assessing the needs of community-based organizations, and the needs and requests are clear and consistent. 75% of organizations would prioritize monetary support, allowing them to purchase food wholesale, stretch resources further, and support the procurement of culturally specific foods. Just over half asked for food donations, 29% asked for volunteer support, and 10% asked for transportation assistance. Each of these support requests are currently being considered by our EOC. But the step that we can take today is to provide $100,000 from general fund contingency for uncertainty, with a suggested allocation of $75,000 going to the Oregon Food Bank for food purchase and distribution, and $25,000 for district-specific distribution based on the needs that each commissioner is seeing and hearing about from the partners and people in need in their districts. My office worked with the Multnomah County Purchasing Manager, Brian Smith, to make sure that the dollar amounts allocated fit within our existing procurement guidelines to allow for dollars to be distributed as quickly and efficiently as possible. Based on what we discussed in our special session last week, my proposal specifies that these funds will increase access to households and/or food security partners to expand impact and reach across Multnomah County. These funds will serve Multnomah County residents who are being impacted by our federal policies. We are getting updates every day on hearing from the federal government in terms of what they're going to do. We don't know exactly when the dollars are going to be released and how much of those dollars are going to be released. What we do know is we've heard from the state that even if they were to receive the dollars today, it would still take at least a week for any benefits to be distributed just because of some of the administrative. So again, I think that really focuses on the urgency of getting resources out into our community as soon as possible. Thank you.
Any discussions or
Can I ask
questions?
some questions?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, and I want to say, we do have folks from the Emergency Operations Center and Procurement and some of our other county staff to help answer questions as well.
One of the questions I asked, but didn't quite get, I think maybe I needed to have stated the question a little bit better. How, if we make this donation, do we have certainty that those resources go to residents in Multnomah County? And related, how do we make sure that if we give this money that it is not then like an equal amount backed out to other areas? Not that I don't care about other areas, but these are Multnomah County taxpayer dollars. So I'm just wondering what assurances we have in relation to how these resources would be allocated.
Yeah, thank you. That is a really important question. Obviously, if these are Multnomah County taxpayer-funded dollars, and we want to make sure that they're used to benefit our community members. So we've asked some questions about how those dollars could get out. So the first thing that I want you all to know is that the county would be able to cut a check to the Oregon Food Bank as soon as tomorrow. So that part could get out into the community right away. The second part is my interim Chief of Staff, Stacy Bork, spoke with the Oregon Food Bank CEO last week to make sure that the intention behind these dollars is that that they would be going to Multnomah County, and they agreed that that could happen.
And then a follow-up, well, maybe it's not a follow-up, maybe it's an additional question. It might be for Chris Voss. How does this fit in strategically to our approach?
Yes, and so I'll invite Chris Voss to come up.
Because this was proposed, I'm assuming I can speak even though I have them, because this was proposed before we had the plan. The report, sorry.
Yeah.
The initial set of recommended actions, I think, is actually what this.
Sure. Chris Voss, Director of Emergency Management for Multnomah County, he, him. So it's a great question. And I think I want to just sort of highlight one or two important aspects that the chair sort of indicated, but really very much are sort of guiding us, and also our communications with these organizations. There's a sense of urgency, and so now is sort of the need. We also know in communicating with these organizations that they've indicated that them receiving funding allows it to go a lot farther than a lot of the other opportunities we have. So we are not going to fill the $29 million hole. And so I think in this case here, what we're really looking at is what are things that we know will improve the system? And if we can improve the system knowing we get leverage dollars and those dollars will be used well and also fast, I think that improves the system. If we are looking for perfection, I just want to say that the additional time probably would do more harm than good, because that means in the short term we're doing nothing. And I also want to say that this approach is also it's very much being vetted as we're seeing these dollars come in from sort of Washington County and Clackamas County. This is a similar approach that we've taken, and why I also sort of support this approach is because it gives us also some flexibility for some of those organizations that wouldn't necessarily receive dollars. And that's not something we've seen a lot of our peers do, but it's something I think that's sort of important for us. And I think this, so if you think about it, it's fast. We know it's fast. It's sort of the best appropriate. We know that them receiving dollars actually can leverage and go farther than us potentially just buying food and handing them food. And then also, I think it gives us some flexibility. So from my standpoint, this is it's a good start. And I also want to say start because we don't know how long this is going to last. I don't think this is the end. It could be a situation where in a week or two, we are up here and we've identified something else. But for right now, I think getting food in people's hands as we know that this gap exists is critical for us.
Thank you.
Yeah, can I build off of the similar question? I know it's great that we have the Oregon Food Bank. For the smaller food pantries that you've talked to and engaged with, do they have the capacity to receive funds? And then on the Oregon Food Bank side, did Stacy, do you know if they have the capacity to prioritize certain zip codes as far as the food distribution?
So I'm going to invite Stacy so she can reflect the conversations that she's had with the Oregon Food Bank. Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, Chair. Stacy Bork, Interim Chief of Staff, Chair Vega Peterson, I, she, her pronouns. So in the conversation with the food bank, I did ask if they have the ability to deploy these resources very quickly and get the dollars and food out the door and distributed, and their answer was yes.
I'm going to pass the gavel back so that I can.
I also have questions before the amendment, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah.
And then just one follow-up.
Yep, go
just for the question regarding the funds and the distribution of funds. I'm just trying to get at the difference between the Oregon Food Bank and then the smaller providers as well, specifically like the culturally specific providers. So from the engagement over the last 4 days, did folks say that they have the capacity to receive funds and distribute?
Of the folks that we did talk to, obviously the vast majority did have the ability where you can donate directly, so that option exists. I want to say about half of those organizations responded back to us very quickly, but we're still communicating with them, so we might find more nuances as we go on.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. We also last night yesterday got the report that we requested as part of our resolution on Friday. And there's a number of programs that are county programs, and I would love to understand, like one is hunger relief, for example, is that something we should be funding more directly, or do these programs that the county currently already funds receive their food from the food bank? Like, will we still have the same impact? There's the hunger relief program. There's services for persons living with HIV that does both congregate meals and delivered meals. There's the ADVSD nursing home and homeless services that coordinates delivered meals. There's stuff in the health department. So just curious if it would make more sense for the county to put money into county programs, or do these programs already work with the food bank and that's where they get their food anyway?
Good morning. Rachel Pearl, she, her pronouns, work for DCHS.
It's too long, just go.
So thanks for the question, Commissioner. I think, we do partner with the Oregon Food Bank, and you've mentioned several different program offers. Some are ours and some are health. So I think you were speaking to the hunger relief component of Sun Schools. And so we do partner with the Oregon Food Bank for the food portion, but also they subcontract with our Sun providers for staffing for those food pantries at their Sun school sites.
And sorry, just to track the food bank subcontract, we send money to the food bank subcontracts with other
our
providers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I guess that's where, when I read the SIT report and compare that with the report, the broader report about hunger and programs, it seems to me that there's a specific need around some of the school pantries, as well as there's a table that the health department sits at that I hadn't heard about before. That's the Food Security Coalition meeting, and sounding like folks there are saying they need dollars. I guess I'm trying to figure out, between triangulating all of these different pieces, where is the best and highest use of our dollar? And I am aware that that feels like a really hard question to answer because the need's everywhere. I'm just having a tough time seeing where the overlap happens and where it makes the most sense for us to put dollars.
Yeah, so it's a great question, and in the 8 days that I've been sort of in charge of this, I think we've got to trust some of the folks that we've talked to. And one of the toughest things about my job is to be here on a day like today, knowing that the solution that we have is probably 80% vetted. But I don't know that waiting another week or two where I can come to the nuance and say, hey, you know what, let's pull another $10,000. The simple fact is the gap is huge. The hole is enormous. And this will help. And I think that that's the approach that we're going with. It could be a situation where we do find some additional gaps that we think are so critical. We say, hey, listen, let's add another $25,000 or something to another county program. But right now, I think understanding that time is of the essence, understanding the urgency, and knowing that this would have an impact, it would be fast, and it would help the people of Multnomah County, I think those are some critical points that we just could not ignore.
Thank you. I totally appreciate that and the work, and thank you for becoming an expert in food security in 8 days. I do want to just say there's some other categories outside of food that we talked about on Friday that likely will need some investments around the impacts of federal law enforcement on our immigrant and refugee communities. And the chair and I are in the midst of working on a sanctuary county policy, both in ordinance and resolution, that may come with some resource ask that we will, of course, be talking more with our colleagues about before we get here. So I just wanted to put that out in the room so that everybody up here knows that that is coming and that will be an additional resource ask. However, today I appreciate us focusing on food.
Yeah, and thank you so much for mentioning that, Commissioner Singleton. I would just add to that my office is also deeply engaged in conversations with the City of Portland because we know that there is funding issues with Portland's Children's Levy funded food banks very much prior to any of these like federal administration actions and the government shutdown they had because of some of the funding issues with that. They were scheduled to end some of their support of Sun school pantry, food pantries in December and end of December, so for January. And so in speaking with the mayor's chief of staff, they are looking at funding sources for some of those and knowing that is something that is also going to be an impact to our community and will have impact regardless of whether the government is open or shut down at that time.
So I'm going to just back up for a moment before I introduce my amendment, pass it back. I want to first thank the sort of huge lift that the county staff did over the last week when we passed the resolution on Friday in a special meeting, asking for an initial set of actions, and to get, less than a week later, a very comprehensive assessment of sort of all the county programs and the impacts, not just on the loss of SNAP benefits, but also the all the federal activity relating to immigration. So I really want to acknowledge that I'm appreciative. And I had signaled a couple and informed commissioners a couple days ago that I might have an amendment based on what the action plan that came back. And I wanted to wait to get it. So I really appreciate that we got it last night and did some speed reading. I think we have a plan in which an initial set of recommendations of things we can do to be supportive and really leverage and expand the county's impact. Because as we've all stated, we're not going to be able to fill the hole, but there are things the county can do because so many of the individuals who receive food assistance also receive other services from the county. So I really appreciate every staff. I mean, if you look at this report, the scope and the comprehensive nature of the county thinking about how we can best leverage our resources and our staff and the services to address this. Shows that it was a lot of people worked over the weekend and a big lift. So thank you for everybody who contributed to this. And at this point, I'm going to hand this back. Based on the report that came back, and then also some the outreach that Commissioner Jones-Dixon and I did to school districts in Multnomah County about what they were going to be seeing and needing. One of the responses that came back, which I've shared with all the commissioners and which I sent over the weekend to the central location that we were to send things so it could inform the report, was definitely a concern already from districts about students who currently, because of the good news is the federal breakfast and lunch program is funded through the end of November. So, I mean, obviously if this goes on and on, we'll have another issue. But right now, the tens of thousands of students who in Multnomah County who receive breakfast and lunch at schools, that will continue through November. So that was communicated from superintendents and also the Department of Education that we're kind of set there. The question was, what about evenings and weekends, which we know are a place where lots of students don't have food security and will not if their families don't receive SNAP benefits. So the amendment that I'm putting on the table for discussion, and again, because we have to do our work in public, this is for discussion, would direct $62,000 for one-time funding to the Sun Schools, which again is a county platform. And then it would increase the amount of district directed funding from $25,000 to $100,000. So instead of each district having $6,000, would have $25,000 to direct. And part of my thinking about this, and I don't think we should wait on Sun Schools because the need is now. Also, one of the other things that was raised is depending on each of the school districts' school calendars. Many of the districts have the entire week of Thanksgiving off, which creates, I mean, at the worst possible time of year, a time of plenty for so many people, a time of scarcity for many of our families. So wanting to recognize that we have that sort of gap coming up as well. But in the report and the recommended actions, the wording that was used in the first recommended action is a primary requested need as of November 5th is monetary support for community partners with a plural versus just one. And I guess one of the things I've heard over the last week when I've been talking to sort of the direct providers within my district is that sort of the gap between what goes to the Oregon Food Bank and then actually reaching their shelves or their mobile vans or their distribution centers or their food boxes. There's a gap or it doesn't necessarily flow through. So this is intended to have a more direct flow through benefit. So that's what I'd like to propose, and I have circulated to everyone a copy of the proposed amendment to put on the table for discussion. So, I don't know. So that's the motion. Is
a point of order. So we already have a motion on the table.
So I'm moving an amendment, which I can do, amendment to the budget modification.
let me just make sure I understand. Chair Vega Peterson, were you making an amendment or is
No.
it just the, okay.
No,
It's as
hers is the
I was speaking to I was speaking to R2, which is the budget modification. And so
Okay.
there were no, so as submitted, that reflects my intention in terms of making
And then,
this.
so now this would be an amendment to the budget modification. And so Commissioner Brim Edwards is proposing that amendment. And Commissioner, you said you circulated it to the board. If I could get a copy of it too, maybe staff can send it to me so I can make sure I'm following.
I'm sure that's happening right now.
Perfect, perfect. So Commissioner Brim Edwards has passed back the gavel to the chair.
It's amazing when you say something like that.
And then, so we have a motion on the table, and then we would need a second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second for the a proposed amendment, which has been shared with commissioner offices and is now being shared with the county attorney. Tasha, have you received a copy of it? Unclear. Okay. Can we make sure that Tasha gets a copy as well? Okay, so discussion on the amendment. Thank you.
So just a frame up is that I think would be totally within, if this were adopted, totally within each commissioner's purview, if they felt that the Oregon Food Bank was the best place to direct their $25,000, they could. Or to something very specific in the district. And I say from just talking to people over the last week and the week leading up to it, the just sense of support for smaller organizations, or even mid-sized organizations that aren't a statewide organization, the need for support is now. And which is why instead of having it going into a central place, and then I'm feeling that the Oregon Food Bank, we don't have a lot of a sense of where the flow through is going to. And my preference is to better understand, to be able to pinpoint that resource to places that could be most in need.
Do we have a certain order, or is this a?
Nope, we can open up as you have questions.
So I actually have a question about the dollars to district offices, which I definitely want some of, but my understanding is there's some potential, I just don't know, how quickly can we get that money out the door, and are there restrictions or procurement
Yes.
issues that come up?
So we have Brian Smith, Multnomah County Purchasing Manager, at the ready, because that is a concern.
The whole team's here.
Folks show up.
We got you. Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. Brian Smith, I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the county's purchasing manager. Based on what I am hearing, I believe that we would likely have the basis for a temporary exemption to be able to get money out. In terms of timing, it would depend who we are sending money to. If they're already set up in our system as suppliers, it can go a lot faster. If we need to set them up as suppliers, I will say that often, because we need to get both their W-9s and banking information, that's the biggest part of the lag. So,
Would that be the case, whether it's $6,000 or $25,000 or 20? I mean, whatever the amount.
About setting them up?
Right, they're either in the system or not. It doesn't matter
Yes.
the amount, right?
Yeah.
So that would be something that would inform
Yes.
commissioners. Like, if somebody's not in the system, it's going to take longer.
Yes.
Versus somebody being in the system.
Got it.
Correct.
Oh, sorry.
Well, I wanted to delve into that, because my understanding was that there was a difference between if this was $100,000 that was going to be directed to different organizations throughout district offices, or or a smaller amount?
Yes, now, the default, when the board approves a program or a budget amendment here, and so we say, what is that need? If that need is 100,000 or the 165 for the amendment, if I did my math right, then the default would be that under the board's rules, we would do a competitive process for that, right? That's under the board's existing rules. The exceptions for that are competitive procurement exemptions. And so just based on what I'm literally hearing here right now, you likely have the potential for, or the justification for a procurement exemption under our rules as well. But in part, it would depend who, it's not clear to me yet how we're selecting these suppliers and not others, but there are prohibitions in the board's rules as well to not fragment the requirement. So the requirement is either 100,000 or 165, depending upon which version you go through. And to say we're going to split that up into $25,000 across each district artificially splits the requirement. So it would need either a competitive procurement or an exemption.
That's true with either scenario, right?
Right,
Since
correct.
It's split. Okay, so we
I
need
believe
that
so
here.
based on what I'm hearing today.
So with the original proposal, $75,000 of it would be dedicated to Oregon Food Bank, and then there would be $25,000 that would be split among the district offices for granting.
Yes, and under the original proposal here, one of the things we have is we have an existing contract set up, an existing procurement authority with Oregon Food Bank that would accommodate the additional $75,000. So that takes care of that procurement issue, and then we would only have the $25,000, which is a small purchase limit. So, so we're fine.
Can I ask?
So I
I'm
just
still
wanted
not seeing
clarification.
I'm still not seeing the distinction.
So does the $25,000 that would then be dedicated to district offices require an exemption for procurement?
No, under the original proposal, no, it would not.
Okay, thank you.
But I'm sorry, but it's bundled with the 75,000, so that makes 100,000. I guess I'm not seeing the difference. So, because the 62,000 is to support the Sun Schools, and then the other, are you saying if it were 95,000, it would be different? Or I'm just not seeing the difference between sending out $6,000 per district versus 25.
Can I try?
Yeah, okay.
Is there a dollar threshold that puts us into needing to do an exemption to the procurement rules if we want to put money out through our district offices?
$25,000 is the board's small purchase limit.
Okay, so if we're under 25, split amongst everybody, no special procurement exemption. If we're over, special procurement exemption.
If I understand, I think so. I'm trying to get at what is our requirement that we're doing here, and how much of that is, I guess, not even being clear on what the selection process is for who we're sending it to as well.
So the selection, but the dollar amount is just the dollar amount threshold.
Okay.
When you're getting into the selection of how we're picking which organizations we might give money to, that I'll just use myself as District 2. I pick Equitable Giving Circle, St. John's Food Pantry, just arbitrarily, because I know them, right? That's the names I have at the top of my head. So there's not a real process. Is that where you're saying there's a concern around procurement and we would still need an exemption to the rules, or we would need, yeah, let me stop there.
Likely. And so, but I think that one of the things that's important that's very clear about this discussion in terms of the overall problem we're trying to address and how the board is trying to address it, and the importance of getting the time out. I feel confident we can get there, and whether that would require a temporary exemption or not, I think there's appropriate justification for it. but I'd want to get a little more details on that.
I mean, just to build on this example, I mean, for example, in District 3, the Asian Health and Service Center is the county already has a relationship with them. That could be a potential, like, part of the 25,000 from District 3.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and again, we're talking about potentially a lot of different suppliers, many of whom we have existing relationships with, and some of them may have contracts that are set up that we could use as vehicles to speed up the transfer, but it's an individual by individual situation, and we'd have to look at it. Yeah.
Okay, so we have a contract with the Oregon Food Bank.
We do.
What is that for, and how much of that contract remains, and could we speed it up?
That particular contract is for the Sun Systems for the school pantries. And so it's set up in a way where it has existing procurement authority, and it's already actually for this service to get food out. And so adding additional funding to it, it's already got appropriate procurement authority.
So if we gave money to the Oregon Food Bank through that contract,
that would be the contract that we would put the actual funding on.
It would go to Sun Schools? Because that's not what the...
That's not what the amendment
Well, it's not what the amendment says, but that's what the contract is, right?
Okay.
I mean,
We'll have the program come and speak up to it. Yeah, thank you.
So for example, in the amendment, the 62,000, if the best way to do it is through the food bank, but then it would be specific to that versus, again, I had a very specific organization, a district, which is like, we're not seeing the flow through. I mean, and it's not a criticism of the food bank, but like they're overwhelmed. We have a need right here. And so if this, I guess I'm trying to see like the 62,000, it's like making it 75, but then we know where it's going. And again, my assumption when we had the special meeting was that we were going to try and utilize information that we received. Again, I think the staff did a great job to inform sort of how we might expend resources both today and in the future.
One thing before Rachel jumps in that I want to speak to is the question about the food bank and the budget. This year, the budget for the food bank for that program offer is about $500,000. They bill us quarterly, so they haven't billed yet for this fiscal year. However, in FY24 and FY25, the food bank fully billed out for their contract to serve Multnomah County residents, and that was when SNAP was fully funded.
What is the question? About, I'm sorry, there's a lot said, so I'm just trying to make sure I answer the question.
Yeah, my understanding is the question is, if we put money into the Oregon Food Bank, it goes out through this contract and it serves Sun Schools in particular, not other programs.
Yes. So if I can clarify, what I think is being asked for, and the 62,000 is to keep 5 food distribution sites open. I believe that's the intent. Am I right about that? That's the amount that it would take to keep 5 sites that were scheduled to close open.
So in order to give staff at DCHS the flexibility, the amendment is specific about Sun, but gives you the capacity to decide the greatest need in the moment.
Sure. So if that were to be distributed as part of our partnership with Oregon Food Bank for the Sun Food Pantries, it would go to the Sun Food Pantries. And one of the conversations has been around the fact that there are 5 sites scheduled to close. And so that amount would give the potential to keep those open because it would allow for the staff to be able to stay on so that those sites stay open. So and that could be directed, that could be a directive that's given to Oregon Food Bank as part of that funding. So I will just say like either way, like Oregon Food Bank we're able to inform how our funds are distributed. So whatever you all decide in terms of being able to add funding to our contracts with Oregon Food Bank that will get more food resources into Multnomah County. And so whether that's through, Sun or through, a general distribution to other food bank sites, like we can inform how those funds are directed and dispersed. So that's helpful.
Thank you, Rachel. And that's what I wanted to clarify. So we do have an existing contract with the Oregon Food Bank. But any dollars that go to the Oregon Food Bank do not necessarily have to go to Sun School food pantries. They can be distributed by Oregon Food Bank to the rest of the 100 food pantries within Multnomah County that may require services. So.
Is that required in the contract? Procurement question. Yes, they're an approved vendor, so obviously that speeds it up. If the purpose changes, is that an addendum to the contract? And is that something we can do quickly? Or is it a new contract because the purpose is different?
Thank you, Commissioner. We had this discussion yesterday with DCHS's Business Services Group, and to come up with a pathway for how can we get money out fast, but also need particular requirements. So it is certainly within the purpose of the contract and for what the procurement was done, which is the food security and getting food out. When the contract was written, it specifies, here are the Sun School locations, but we also wrote in some flexibility that says if things happen, I think the word is, other kinds of public health emergencies or other emergencies, we reserve the right to say, we need this funding to go and fund food over here, kind of thing. So I believe that the flexibility was built into the original contract. And given that, depending upon what other kinds of requirements might go along with these specific funds, we could follow up with an amendment for that contract, but that should not slow us down to be able to get the funding out quickly.
So as I understand then, these two proposals, the original proposal is food bank dollars with the flexibility that's built into the contract that you just spoke to. The amendment is to food bank with the specific restriction to Sun schools. Is that correct?
And leaving staff the flexibility of what the Sun School need is.
Right, but just because there's the other flexibility of other food pantries.
This is flexibility of like the Sun School.
Yours is more restricted than the original proposal. And that's fine. I'm just trying to understand because they're starting to feel the same.
Yeah, that is correct. And I just, again, want not instead of being directive to staff, which we don't do, but giving them they have the relationships and own the Sun School program to decide how that gets managed within the contract.
Thank you. I'm definitely done asking questions on this part. When we talk about the dollars to districts, I'll come back in because that's where I want to come back to with you.
Okay, great. So any further questions? We are still under the amendment conversation, just as a reminder. So are there further questions you have then now about the district allocations?
Yes, sorry. I'm still trying to wrap my head around. I don't care about the amount of money. I just want to understand the process. So whatever amount of money is distributed to districts or district offices, does it have, is there the discretion to break that up? So instead of going everything to Blanchet House, there's like a split between, I'm just making these things up, I have no idea if they, to like Stone Soup and Blanchet and blah, blah, blah. Is that, as long as like either they are an existing vendor or we can get them qualified as vendors, does it matter? From either proposal, does it have to be one contribution? Or can it be more than one organization, and what would need to be the district's office responsibility related to documenting intent? And I'm not familiar with doing this, so
Yeah.
I'm not.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think one of the things in order to document, what I would suggest to the board is that regardless of which path you take, that it would be good practice to document who we're sending, which amounts, and to document that in an exemption. And I think that's aids in the transparency of the process and would get you where you need to go.
And I just wanted to be clear. I mean, the intention is for the offices, for all of you to given what are you hearing from your district, what are the most needs, working with DCHS to help get those dollars out the door so that they can be distributed just as quickly as possible.
Yes.
Thank you. And procurement as well.
I think you got to most of what I was trying to get to on the commission allocations. But I will say, as appropriately as you should, you caveated the heck out of an exemption to procurement rules with likely. And I don't want to get stuck with needing to go through a special exemption and having a bunch of barriers. So can you talk a little bit more about what that process looks like and if it's something we can take care of right away if we do decide to vote above that $25,000 threshold coming through some sort of procurement process?
I think based on the discussion that I'm hearing today, the actual process would be for one of the procurement staff at DCHS to document all of the reasons that we are interested in, the county's interested in spending these funds for these purposes with these suppliers, right? And that exemption process then is submitted through MMP, and it gets departmental approval, and then I will be approving on behalf of the chair. And the process generally takes a day max, and the longest part of it is actually drafting the document.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I'm sorry, the drafting the document is the document in need?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, I didn't hear.
I'm sorry, the drafting the document is the actual documenting the need?
Yes, it would be. There are specific requirements in the rule to document the request for a temporary exemption and how this particular request meets the rule.
I think we have 29 million.
I think so.
Documented.
I think so.
Chair Vega-Peterson, if I may quickly. This is a bit remedial, but I think it might help level set some of the thinking here. What we're talking about now is a budget modification, right? So that's modifying how our dollars are allocated. It doesn't speak to all of the procurement issues, and Brian's juggling a lot of ideas in his head and trying to get through it. So we have our allocation, and then once it's allocated, we move through procurement, then we move through contracts, and we move through administration, right? So in the normal process, it's very slow and plodding because the whole idea of public contracting and procurement is that it's open, it's transparent, it's verifiable. It's not a good old boys network where people are funneling money to certain, to their favorite people or something like that. So that's like the overarching idea. This process is inherently a little different because we really do have an emergency situation, which Brian, he's talking about emergency procurement under the PCRB rules. We don't do it very often, but it is available if we can make the demonstration as necessary under Chapter 47 of the PCRB rules. So that turns into an expedited process, and all the caveats Brian made before about, well, we'll have to document it, we'll show it, and that's where we're going to do the public transparency part, so that we can demonstrate how the dollars were spent, when they were spent, and what process we used to identify who should get the money, right? So like identify based on meeting the emergency need would be the sort of documentation that we're looking at. But this is an example of when we can move quickly, but we also need to be able to demonstrate what we've done.
I absolutely appreciate that. And as a former bureaucrat, I know how long even those expedited processes can take. And so that's part of why I'm trying to parse out the dollar amount threshold that we wouldn't have to go through that type of process, because to me, that's the crux of the difference between the base bud mod and the amendment is it's $25,000 versus $100,000, which seems like it's pretty different processes. But I trust what you said. It can be done in a day. We can get it turned around. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. So I had a couple of, I had a question. So I just want to clarify. So when Stacy was having conversations with Brian in your office about the $100,000, he indicated that it was going to be spread throughout all 5 offices for the commissioners and $20,000 each. So I just wanted to confirm that that was true. And I see him nodding, but I just want to make sure that that was the intention behind this amendment.
I'm happy for that to be the intention, so it would be 20,000.
Okay, I mean, the total is still 100,000, but I just wanted to make sure we had that on the record. And then I did.
Can I just ask, is that what your intention was on the 25?
No.
That would be 5 for each?
No, it was going to be, so for me, the allocation to the Oregon Food Bank was done in consultation with our departments and trying to figure out how we could get the money into the public in the quickest way possible and have the broadest amount of spread for the organizations that are in need and the people that are in need in Multnomah County. So that wasn't my intention with the part for the underlying amendment. For the underlying budget modification.
I actually wrote it in a way that mirrored your 25,000, but just increased the amount, because I'm happy to make it be the 5 offices, which would reduce it to 20. I originally had structured it like you had structured your 25,000.
Okay. All right, thank you. I think the other thing that I want to point is, in the meeting that I had with Sun School Partners this week, they did lift up the impact of the Portland Children's Levy funding that was going to be running out, and working with and trying to figure out, again, this is like something that is going to be an issue. And so I appreciate, we've heard from them on that. We have been in conversations with the city of Portland, I think even since at the beginning of last week, in terms of how they can show up and be a partner in some of this emergency response like we've seen from other counties, and they are very willing to do that. And I know that this is also an area that they are looking at as well. So that is one of the concerns that I have about the amendment, is that I think the $62,000 is also something that that may be something that that the city is also looking at, how to backfill the gap in some of the food pantry dollars there.
So, and this is unrelated to the amendment, or it's like in addition to, we know this isn't going to make, it will help, and that's great. I also think we should be, as a commission, communicating to the state. They have emergency reserves, and rainy day fund is now is the time. I mean, they actually have the capacity to do a lot more. And I think as a commission, we should be really pushing the state that has more resources than we do to actually let that flow. So I would hope if other commissions are interested that we could send a joint letter to the state asking for them to, I know they've come out with an initial $5 million, but we know that's not going to fill the need. And if you look within the state of Oregon, they're the ones who have probably the most money, and I know their legislators are already talking potentially about this as the SNAP benefits suspension drags on.
So I just, I don't want us to belabor this much longer if we can avoid it. I think the reality is we all want to get dollars out the door quickly. It sounds like there's alignment around the food bank. There's a little bit of difference in the dollar amounts between.
I'm happy to bump my amendment
the
to
original
75.
to the amendment. I think the other piece about getting dollars out through districts' offices makes sense. So I would love for us to figure out how we can move forward with some urgency and kind of figure out where folks are at and get these dollar amounts either amended appropriately so we can just move forward and take this vote that I think everybody is ready to say yes to food.
Thank you for that. And because we do have another board work session agenda item on preschool for all, so I want to make sure we have time for that, that we don't run out of time for that important discussion as well.
So I'm wondering, Chair, if we amended the amendment to 75,000, we're clear that it's going through Sun School through the food bank, whether that is aligned?
I mean, I personally am not supportive of that because I just feel like the underlying budget modification addresses both the need to get dollars to the Oregon Food Bank and gives flexibility to districts to allocate dollars within the procurement guidelines effectively into specific needs within districts. So, so if there's going to be a motion or to amend or something, that. But personally, I don't think we need to get into the details around the amendment because we have an underlying budget modification that I think addresses the needs that we have in our community right now.
But my understanding from Mr. Smith is that we could also fit within the procurement guidelines that the larger amount.
I think the difference is one is restricting it where it doesn't speak to if there are food pantries who need dollars that we've built into the flexibility in the contract. If we restrict it to Sun Schools, then those other programs couldn't get money through this. That's really the only difference. But my understanding is from that conversation is that it's primarily Sun Schools and then there's some language to build flexibility for others. So you're trying to preserve the flexibility at the program level to fund more than, or to serve more than Sun Schools, and your amendment is to restrict it to Sun Schools.
So the underlying budget modification doesn't mention Sun Schools at all.
But that's what the whole contract conversation was about.
Right, but I'm just saying it didn't appear that's the intent.
I don't think that is the intent.
At all.
So
they just said that's what the contract is for, though, but built in with flexibility.
Yes, but the original budget modification is not for us.
I appreciate that, Chell, but that's why we have the conversation, right? Is it wasn't in the original documentation, but that's the facts of the contract that was just shared with us in this public meeting. So that's really the only piece is it going to be restricted just to Sun Schools, or is it going to go through where there's flexibility in the contract for it to be more than Sun Schools?
Actually, that's why I increased the amount to the district offices, that if there was district-specific or culturally specific organizations that commissioners and the chair wanted to direct funds to, that they would have more than $6,000.
Yeah. If I can jump in. I extremely appreciate the conversation and the spirit of the modification. It's in alignment with something that we put forward with the program offer, 251478, as far as getting food out to culturally specific food hubs. Really appreciate the full-on report. So shout out to Sarah, Mr. Voss, and team regarding that. I would recommend us moving forward with just the modification, the initial modification, and then I would love to work with you on an APR as far as putting forth, because it gives us the practice of putting out the funds as far as the $6,000, and then knowing that we have to do this in short order within the next week or two. We're going to have this conversation again around meeting the need, given the reports and things like that, and all of the changes, all the things that we have to work through. I would recommend just moving forward with the initial modification so we can get the funds out, discuss it over the next week. We can work together on an APR that we can bring to the board to increase the amounts. And in addition to that, I'm just thinking about like the workload for my office as well. We would love to get the funds out, but that's it. So that would be my recommendation. That way we can move on to the PEO conversation. What are your guys' thoughts?
Okay. So I'm concerned about the timing. So of course, if
we could start working on it this afternoon.
Well, I guess it's like we're another week out, and I'm concerned that what I don't feel I hear is like we're going to have flexibility. It may go to some of the school programs, but it may not. So I'm feeling like it's just, which could be the intent of the whole commission, like just put it in there and it's going to get out somewhere. And again, my preference is like we have a report outlining the needs. We have some specific ways we can do it. We actually have a relationship. I'd rather be more specific. I also feel like $6,000 is not it. If you gave $6,000 to one organization, that may help that one organization, but you're helping one organization, and then it becomes kind of like, well, which one do you pick?
Yeah, so I'm recommending that we move forward with this and then come back to the board and ask for another $100,000 or whatever that amount is.
But why wouldn't we just do it today? I guess
Just because I feel like it. Yeah, it's just my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so are we ready to vote on the amendment?
I need one thing clarified. In the original, I think if we go through the Sun School contract, which I think largely distributes to Sun Schools, I think there's a guarantee, obviously, Sun Schools by definition are in Multnomah County. How do we have assurance that the money going to the Oregon Food Bank under the budget mod is in fact going to Multnomah County?
Yeah.
Stacy Bork.
Yes. So we have an existing contract, as we all have discussed, with the food bank that directs resources. The funding in the kind of proposal that supported the Bud Mod directs the funding to stay within Multnomah County. And I've communicated that directly to the food bank to say any resources allocated through this budget modification will serve Multnomah County residents with a confirmation. Okay.
And then are we requiring them to report back out or report to, can we direct them to?
Yeah, we have in the proposal 2 reporting mechanisms, quantity of food and I think number of households served.
Great, thank you.
So just clarification, I'm looking at what was posted in the APR, and it was 100,000 to the food bank. There wasn't any.
The APR didn't specify a specific organization. It said food security and hunger relief organizations. The chair's proposal that she submitted this week specified $75K to Oregon Food Bank and $25K to be distributed among the District 1, District 2, District 3, and District 4 in totality.
So it was just a general pot of 100,000, and then informally, so I say, what was proposed last week and posted was 100,000 to the food bank? And I'm just saying that is what.
So the budget modification as posted passes through additional funding from contingency into a program offer. Within that program offer, then those dollars can be allocated in any number of ways, and normally the ways that the allocations are divided up are determined by the departments and as experts in the things. The memo that was that my office put out gave suggestions as in terms of like the guidance that how I envisioned that it would be done, and that was in consultation with all of the EOC meetings that have been happening, the conversations with the providers, what I've heard from the board in our meeting on Friday. So, but the budget modification itself is about moving money from the contingency into DCHS through this program offer.
One thing, and I'm sure we can handle this via conversations and have it in writing, can we have an understanding with the Oregon Food Bank that that this money is not to supplant other state dollars that were coming to Multnomah County?
Happy to have that conversation. I can't imagine, given the current funding situation with food resources, that supplanting would become an issue. They've spent our dollars year over year, and the state investment for that $5 million is statewide, which we know that's 140 some odd $1 million going to the statewide. That is the SNAP equivalent. And so happy to include that if that is a reassurance that this board wants.
Yeah, I just don't want, we put in 100,000, and not that I don't care about the need in other communities, I do, but that they move some of that state dollar then into Coos County, whose board doesn't have.
So I'm hearing that you want to ensure that the funds that this board allocates are additive to the services received in Multnomah County.
Yes.
Whether it was metro or state allocation, right? Yeah.
So do you envision that they're going to give us a list of here's how the money went, so we can see if actually the Sun schools that have a, again, I'm just going to, we talked about a process last week where we get an initial set of action plans, so how do we know that actually that's aligned with this discussion here?
I'm going to believe that and trust that the Oregon Food Bank is going to comply with their existing contract and their existing contract authority to deliver resources in this community as described in their contract with us. This is an extension and expansion of that existing contract. Oregon Food Bank is up to testify when we get to that piece. And I think that they are a viable, trusted partner in this community who's been doing work for a long time, and requiring that they distribute resources across Multnomah County is something that they've committed to. And in this moment, I want to believe that they're seeing the 146,000 people who don't have food stamps right now, and understanding this board's direction that we want to get food to those Multnomah County residents from District 4 all the way through District 1.
I didn't in any way say I didn't trust the Oregon Food Bank. There's been representations that this will help the Sun schools, and they have flexibility to do a whole host of other things. So I'm asking for the accountability of how will we know where the food got distributed.
I don't know that the food bank can provide that level of specificity of which dollar went to what food bank. I'm happy to explore that conversation with them.
But if we've been told, for example, that we're going to have food pantries, Sun School food pantries that are going to cease providing food, wouldn't we know if some of these resources went into that? I guess then we should just accept it just could go anywhere. But we shouldn't say this is going to go to the Sun schools when we don't actually know that. I mean, so unless we're going to get some sort of report, which seems.
I think that's a department question, right? Because the department, if you look at the narrative of this program offer that the chair's original budget modification goes to, it says it provides food assistance via Sun Community Schools. It partners with the Oregon Food Bank, 6 school districts, Portland Parks and Recs, nonprofit Sun agencies, Multnomah County Library, Portland Children's Levy, and Partners for a Hunger Free Oregon. So I think, Rachel, the question for you is, will we know that these dollars are first targeting holes that might happen for these pantries that might close? Or even if we're just giving direction that that's how we want this to be prioritized.
Yeah, so we have there's a track record of working with Oregon Food Bank in this way, during COVID, during other times of directing funding that we provide to ensure that it goes to particular sites and to serve particular programs. So I also want to shout out Annie Kirshner, who's brilliant and amazing and our food expert in the county. I rapid chat her about 400 times a day, so apologizing publicly to her for that. But so I think we have a great relationship. We absolutely can communicate with Oregon Food Bank about whatever the intent turns out to be. Because if it were directed specifically for Sun, we would be saying that that's what it's for and that's what it would be directed for. If we're saying it's general, but we want to ensure that food is given to our Sun sites, we can work with them on that as well.
Thank you. I was just asking whether we would know, because what I would hate to have is we represent in a meeting that, like, this is going to fill a Sun School gap, and that happened, but then we also, like, I just feel like if we're sending money, and that seemed to be the intent, it would be useful to know whether that actually happened.
Yes, I think
that is, so I really appreciate that, and thank you, Annie, for all your work. That's what I was asking, just like, okay, we send it there. I mean, the number's bigger than I have in my amendment, so I don't have any issue with that. But I would have an issue if we're implying in a meeting that it's going to fill the gaps in Sun School, and it's going through that contract, but we actually don't know that.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I mean, and yes, and I think we want to make sure that the legislative intent of this body is always, to the best degree possible, actually what happens in that. And I think that is very, very much having like report backs and ensuring that happens is something that's a priority of ours. So, Tasha, can we have a roll call vote on the amendment, please? The amendment.
Commissioner Moyer?
Yes.
Commissioner Singleton?
No.
Commissioner Brim Edwards?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones-Dixon?
No.
Chair Vega Peterson?
No, the amendment fails. So now we are back under discussion on the underlying budget amendment. Tasha, do we have any public testimony on this item?
Yes, we have 3 people signed up.
All right.
We have Jen Turner, Simon Crow, and Lightning. We're going to start with Jen, who is available online. Jen, you can unmute yourself and begin.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Thank you for...
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, great. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Jen Turner. I'm Associate Director of Partnerships and Programs at Oregon Food Bank, and in my role, I provide oversight and strategy for our hunger relief efforts in Multnomah County, as well as the Tri-County Portland metro area and a few other places. And I just really appreciate this opportunity to share about our work here in Multnomah County, what we're seeing right now in the face of these converging food security crises caused by the actions and decisions taking place at a federal level. I think as has been very clearly sort of illuminated in the discussion so far, the bedrock of Oregon Food Bank's work in Multnomah County is our network of food assistance partners. Yes, one thing that we absolutely do in mass is acquire and source truckload quantities of food to distribute throughout the whole state. But where the rubber really hits the road for us is our work with the hundreds of organizations providing food relief to our community through free groceries, hot meals, and all the other ways. Our network is comprised of organizations like ERCO, Lift Urban Portland, William Temple House, Hand Up Project, Snowcap, Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon, Feed 'em Freedom Foundation, Portland Community College, multiple campuses, Latino Network, Self-Enhancement, Inc., El Programa, so many more. And as discussed with the school pantry program in partnership with the Sun System, that's where we work in hand in glove with culturally specific organizations to deliver on our school pantry program. I want to share a little bit of stats just to kind of paint a picture, although I think we all are feeling it acutely right now. But our network in Multnomah County from July 2024 to June 2025 reported 710,000 pantry visits across that network and distributed nearly 25 million pounds of food. And 93,000 of those visits were to our school pantry network, with an average of about 2,800 visits per week. We also know that in Multnomah County, 43% of people who are food insecure identify as BIPOC, and 39% of all food pantry visitors across our network are BIPOC, and we estimate that this is lower than reality given some gaps in the data collection and reporting. This figure also jumps to 75% of pantry visitors identifying as BIPOC across our school pantry program. And this highlights how this program is one of the core ways that we're in partnership with our BIPOC communities. As mentioned, this network has been incredibly strained prior to the converging crises of SNAP benefits lapsing, and the escalation in immigration enforcement destabling our communities. The statewide, we saw a 31% increase of pantry visits. And just in this past week, we've been hearing from our partners in Multnomah County that they're reporting increased visitors ranging from 25% to, oh no. Okay, I'll be done.
You can finish your
Wrap it
sentence.
up.
25% to, I think we're all.
To over 100%, and
Yeah.
many agencies are reporting that they're running out of food, rationing food, and are having to turn families away. The last thing I just want to say, if I can have like 10 seconds, is I heard a number of comments about like the way that we can work in partnership with different community scale organizations. And the Oregon Food Bank, through the way we're structured and the way we approach our work, we offer many, many levers to pull in terms of being able to direct resources directly to community partners, many of them that were named as examples throughout this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Now we have lightning.
Morning.
Good morning. My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super We the People Labs X1, X7, X33, 33. To President Trump, there's a saying, you never want to mess around with the SNAP benefits, especially if you're trying to win elections, because that doesn't only affect the people who are on those benefits, it affects their family members, community members, pretty much everybody. So I'd be very cautious of ever cutting those benefits in the manner they've been cut. Now, my position, after listening to Commissioner Edwards, I think her amendment was very reasonable, and I think that she was basically just pointing out that she wanted that funding to be directed to the Sun schools to make sure it gets there and have proper records to determine that. And again, the Sun schools would be the best people to do that. They either get the food or they don't. They'll let you know real fast. Now, my position is to take it a little bit farther, is that instead of the $162,000 that she was requesting, I'm requesting my amendment of $262,000. And where that additional $100,000 would go to is that what I'd like to do is have that funded to some various food carts throughout the city to where everybody uses. And we fund 1,000 meals at $20 a meal. That comes up to about $20,000. That gets us about 5 to 7 days per week. So we know we're going to have to increase that over time. But again, what we're doing is we're funding the people immediately out through the communities and also taking care of the food carts and the small business owners. And say from 12 to 5, everything at this food cart is free. We've got it, we've got the tab. And you just can't exceed a certain amount, but everybody just comes in and says, yeah, I want a free meal from you today. Thank you so much. And that's all being funded by Multnomah County. And again, that just takes an additional $100,000. You get 5 days for doing that. You pick out certain food carts, and the meals are just handed out to people. They just walk by. Who knows who needs it right now? That's the whole point. There's a lot of people out there that need the food. So they're able to just walk up to the food cart and say, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. Thank you so much, Multnomah County, for considering us. And we're just walking around, and here we are. Thank you so much. If you need to extend it, you go another 5 days. That again, another $20,000. And the reality is that you have to get that food to these people fast. We're in an emergency situation. And this procurement issue, I don't think it's even a concern. We're in an emergency situation of people not having food. And that's a big deal. The federal government really messed up here.
Thank you.
And they're going to recognize that when people decide to vote. They really messed up.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Next up, we have Simone Crow. Sorry, I said the wrong name, and I was surprised you didn't come up.
Chair Vega-Peterson and Commissioners, thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Simone Crow, and I am the co-facilitator of Thrive East PDX's Community Resilient Work Group in East Portland. I also have a background in anti-hunger advocacy. As we all know, our county has been infiltrated by ICE without our consent at the same time as public services and SNAP have been suddenly taken away from community members in need. We are in crisis, and our most vulnerable kids and families need our urgent support. Ioana Molina, Executive Director of Guerreras Latinas, one of our member organizations, has been telling me many stories about immigrant families not only living in fear but struggling to survive in recent weeks due to the threat of detention and deportation of their loved ones. Here's just one story of many. One of the women Guerreras Latinas serves has stopped going to work because she doesn't want to get deported. She is terrified of being deported to Mexico because she has a son with special needs, and he's getting care here. If they get sent to Mexico, he won't have access to the meds and other supports that he needs. Ioana tells me about parents who aren't taking kids to school because they are afraid to leave their homes, and a lot of these kids don't have access to the bus because they live too far out. Of course, this means no education, social interaction, school meals, or access to backpack programs with food for the families. One of Guerreras Latinas' superstar volunteers is a teacher assistant, and she's out of work because there are no kids in the classrooms. After-school programs, including the Important Son programs, have been empty of Latino kids for weeks. As people get detained, often dads, often primary breadwinners, moms are afraid to leave the house and don't have income anymore. I worry about them and their kids going hungry, babies needing their formula, their ability to pay rent, and even buy basic things like toilet paper and diapers. The ICE presence is causing a massive disruption in our communities. Guerreras Latinas hasn't even been doing active outreach, and we've already had more than 50 families reach out to us for help this week. To serve these families just for the next 6 weeks, we estimate that we need $30,000, and though I deeply appreciate their work, it has been made clear to us that Oregon Food Bank is not able to support us in this effort. $6,000 is greatly appreciated and will serve roughly half of our families for 1 week's supply of food. Right now, volunteers and community-based organizations are mobilizing to do what we can to get food and basic resources to these families. Amidst an environment of surveillance and militarization, we have organized a weekly grocery and basic resources delivery food co-op program for East Portland immigrant families that leverages discounted, culturally specific food and will include handwritten cards with messages of care, know your rights flyers, and resource flyers. But food is expensive. We need urgent foods now to help these mamas and their babies survive and to let them know that they're not alone, that we care for them, that we're here for them, that they're important, valued members of our community. I hope that we can eventually change the state law barring urgent funds being distributed without going through a lengthy procurement process to high-need, trusted nonprofits. But until then, I strongly urge you to at least direct at least $25,000 now, more in the future. Can we release another $25,000 tomorrow? Can we release another $25,000 the next day? And so on, as according to ORS 2.279, there's no specific fixed time period, such as per day, month, or year, attached to the $25,000 limit itself.
Thank you.
Thank you. I urge you to think creatively and act with urgency to care for our community members.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. All right. Any further discussion on the underlying budget amendment?
Yes, I want to just, again, I said it before, but thank the staff for coming up with a comprehensive set of actions. I'll just say I think this is a missed opportunity. I feel that, a week from now, the delay, or 2 weeks from now, I heard this morning, like, we're going to do Sun Schools in phase 2. It's like, our communities can't wait for phase 2. If we're going to do something, we should have done it this morning. I'm going to support the amendment because it's the basic, but I think $6,000 is performative, and I don't feel that that we could actually take steps that we know would get food into places where the county already has a mechanism to provide resources and support. And I'm, as we get further into this, I feel like the longer we wait, the greater the need grows, or we just miss the opportunity altogether. So I'm going to support, but I feel it's a missed opportunity to not provide more support to organizations right now. I guess we could have another special meeting if we wanted, but otherwise waiting till next week is waiting till next week.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other conversation? Okay. Tasha, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Moyer?
Yes.
Commissioner Singleton?
Yes.
Commissioner Brim Edwards?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones-Dixon?
Yes.
Chair Baker Peterson?
I'm not supposed to be doing this.
That is correct. No, I'm sorry.
At this point,
I'm so confused.
No, I can vote. I'm
You
not
can
supposed
vote
to
on
be
every
holding the
matter.
gavel. So, yes. Is that, it's still legit if we continue?
Yes.
Motion passes 5.
So, yeah, so I vote yes. And then,
The motion passes 5-0.
thank you. All right. Okay, thank you, and sorry about that. It got a little confusing with the passing back and forth. All right, so now we're going to take a very brief, maybe like 3-minute break as we rearrange to a work session. One of the things, though, before we do that, I want to thank everyone who was part of the conversation today. Appreciate the staff helping us work through that. So we have a limited time. We were going to have we only have about a half hour for the, until the end. We can go afterwards, but. So I'm asking the board right now how you would like to structure the conversation today. I have asked my team to look at where so we can either go long and wanted to know what people's abilities are to go long today. And the other thing is we are looking at starting early on November 17th, 18th, for any items that we don't get to add another session. So I tried to flag earlier that we were running out of time, so I'm open to the board of how you would like to manage today.
Well, I just don't understand how this ended up earlier on the agenda than something that has been on the agenda for quite a long time. And I think we all knew this was going to take a bunch of time. So I'm pretty profoundly disappointed because a lot of work went into today. It was a very high priority for several of us, and a proposal in which I didn't even see the language of, because it was not sent out until yesterday at 2:30, got to take the entire agenda for something that, and don't get me wrong, this is a very important conversation, but I just feel like if it's not, how do these decisions get made about what goes in what order, and when is time protected on an agenda?
So I appreciate that conversation. I don't know what you're talking about the 2:30, what was sent out at 2:30?
Or modified proposal.
Oh, so that was what the plan, but the budget modification was shared last week during our, at the meeting. So I do want to say that the budget modification was handed out last week.
It has literally changed like 5 times. So I'm not, that passed, that's not the point. The point is, for an issue that was incredibly important to this board.
Yes.
Have it become a secondary issue on this agenda that we're now getting almost no time, it is incredibly frustrating to me.
So we can go till 12:30 to make sure that we have the full hour of discussion for this. There has been a ton of work. I know folks in my offices and the preschool and early learning division, as well as our partners, have been really working hard. So I totally understand where you're coming from. There was a budget amendment to the budget modification that was shared at 10 p.m. last night that took much more time than was expected originally. So I will say, like, our conversation for R2 went much longer. And we spent a lot of time on an amendment that we got late last night. So that being said, though, I will say that part of the thinking around about how we schedule these meetings is about the format of being down in the work session versus coming back to the seat, and just the room management of that, of like having a chance for us to move and engage in the work session conversation there.
So I think this is a longer conversation that I don't want to take more time from here for, but I do think it's a valid question of how the order got set up. So I would ask us to come back to that, whether it's through action that you want to put on an agenda. I'm happy to support that, or another space, but I can go till 12:45 and would love us to be able to move into that so we don't lose any more time for that hour that we had allocated. You can't.
What is everyone's end time? 12:30. Okay.
I'm good with whatever the majority of the commission But I join Commissioner Moyer in wanting to make sure that we have enough time for the discussion.
Yeah. Okay, great. So we will take a very quick 3-minute, so we can transfer the room from to the work session format, and then we'll move into our conversation with the plan to go till 12:30. All set? She's always looking to you, but it's right for me. I know. Okay, thanks, Sarah. I know, should have just gobbled really hard. Okay, we are back in session for the board work session on Preschool for All. So this is, again, we're going to go till 12:30 today and appreciate the conversations here. Today's discussion is another important step in helping everyone understand all the work happening around Preschool for All. We have a long-term commitment to build this program in a sustainable way. This is about being responsive to the board and to community partners and to be transparent about PFA processes and program decisions. Today specifically is a chance for the board to get an overview of the PFA advisory committees, the TAG and the PAG and the community engagement work, but it is also about talking about the priorities for this commission. And so I want to thank Commissioner Singleton, Commissioner Moyer, for bringing forward this, and specifically, Commissioner Singleton, you proposed this work session, so I'm going to turn it over to you for introductions.
Thank you. I think just a bit of that, we had been planning, I think when we talked about indexing in August, the board said we wanted to agree on an assessment process, and this is really our opportunity to get there. My understanding is that commission offices have had opportunity to submit questions. And so I think if there's any remaining questions that anyone hasn't gotten in about Preschool for All, please do send those to Quinn, my chief of staff, so we can make sure those get added to the list. So that we're really organizing what all of those different work sessions or briefings will look like over the coming weeks. And additionally, I think that there's some categories that we're starting to see. There's some tax questions that I think you all will talk about in relation to the TAG. And then there's some questions that are more programmatic that may be appropriate for the existing advisory bodies that work more directly with the department. So I think all of those pieces are really critical that we bring together. I know that today we'll spend some focus on TAG, PAG, and the I should stop using all these acronyms. The Technical Advisory Group. What is the PAG?
Stephen Herrera, Senior Policy Advisor for Chair Jessica Vega-Peterson. It's the Program Advisory Group.
Thank you. The Program Advisory Group, and then the Preschool for All Advisory Committees, and looking at their current scopes of work and processes. I don't want to take time today because of the shortened time allotment we have, but again, please do, if you haven't submitted questions and you have them about the program, send those in so we can finish out the work plan for the remaining sessions that we'll have on this topic. So I appreciate those who were able to get them in. I did get one from you, Commissioner Brim Edwards. I know Commissioner Moyer and I had a bunch, so ours are all in there. But if there's any others, please do send them over.
I mean, one of the things, I'm just going to state a question, is like, we had this discussion multiple times, is like, what is the plan with very specific actions to get to universality? And then what is the program costs of the actual measure that passed? And I feel like we keep having meetings and we keep having asked that question repeatedly, and I don't know how we can even talk about the tax increasing or decreasing without knowing what the actual underlying program costs are. And so
all of those are absolutely in there, and I agree. That's part of why I think we said during that August process, like, we actually need to have a say as a board in what this review process looks like, and what are some of those big budget levers.
But just like watching the meeting the other day and then looking at the materials, again, there's a, like, what new, like, a property tax? It's like, the measure had a tax in it. Like, what's sustainability? It's like, I mean, to me, it's hard to have any of these discussions, so I'm not preempting today's discussion, but I'm just saying, without that, it's all kind of just like a theoretical discussion about, do we need to increase? Do we need to decrease? Like, what is sustainability and what is the program and what's the fidelity to what was said to the broader community? So
I will say, Commissioner, that's exactly what this is intended to do. Is this is the first briefing. If we're not getting what we need here, then it's opportunity to give that feedback again so that we can get that into the ongoing work plan, but I know that my staff, your staff, and the chair staff have worked really hard, as well as you all, on pulling these pieces together. So I might offer, let's kind of get started again in lieu of, reality of the time limit that we have. And I think this being a top priority for Commissioner Moyer, it feels critical that we get to the section of some of the pieces that you were really wanting to get to today.
And I will just say, just to flag, so we are looking at right now, we've held time on December 16th to specifically talk about the Preschool for All's path to universality and the total program costs and those kinds of things. So we can, as we have our conversation today, we can add to that, but that is trying to get those, that scheduled at the time that we have.
So I'm just going to say, and only because I've been here on the commission 2 years longer, but this is the same conversation information I've been asking for 2 years, when we had the very first vote with zero information about not increasing the tax. I mean, the tag hadn't even been, so I really think, like, before asking our opinions on, and we keep asking our opinions on what, like, the tax amount and increasing or decreasing, and I feel like that is, we're being asked questions not informed by what the plans are, or even letting us pressure test or making sure that, like, we're all aligned with that.
So I believe that Commissioner Moyer is next in run of show, so I will hand it over to you.
Thank you, and I appreciate this conversation. I could not agree more with Commissioner Brim Edwards' statements. One of the reasons that I specifically asked that we start our Preschool for All conversations related to the role of the PEG and the TAG, what they're working on, how that came about, what we have spent $600,000 of consultant fees on. No offense. I've watched. I appreciate it. I sure hope to God we did not pay for the economic presentation Echo Northwest provided, because I've seen it 3 other times from 3 other organizations who have paid for that exact same presentation. So I'm really hoping that is not in the scope of work we paid for, where wild leaps of correlation equals causation were made that just were not grounded in truth. But for me, I really want to understand how the TAG ended up with the work plan that they are currently on. It clearly did not come from the board. It is not based in statute. And we are spending, at this point, $500,000 on this advisory group that is currently looking at issues such as switching the tax. Number one thing we're looking at is switching the PFA tax to a property tax. Did that come from the board? Because that is the least politically viable idea I have ever heard. Who in the world asked for us to look into that? Second, a soda tax. Now, that didn't make the top 6. Thank you, because I don't know who thinks that's going to produce significant money. It's wildly classist and regressive. The other options, again, in the language, how we're going to have a tax conversation. They have not been given a detailed explanation of, nor have we, what the full cost of rolling this out to full enrollment and continuation is. What are the core elements of PFA that drive those things? Why a tax group would remotely talk about policy implications, that's not their purview. And then you're going to have a policy committee talk about how best to cut a program. I have not participated in a conversation at the board level that we want to cut the program, that we're looking to cut the program, nor is that what statute says the tag is for. So I really need to wrap my head around how something that is created in statute, and I saw the flow chart, apparently to inform the board, is working on something at complete odds with the language in our code passed by the voters to an end that we did not ask for, which is, what as a tax policy 6 people think would be best, even though over 60% of the voters of Multnomah County chose a revenue product. And why is the tags work before, also, I don't want to get started on why we have a PEG when we already have an advisory group that was board appointed, why they haven't done their work of saying these are the core elements, which I believe was an entire report. I don't understand why in the world we're debating policy questions that were clearly debated for 2 years in the report that is the foundation of Preschool for All. Why we're now rehashing conversations that is the foundation of Preschool for All. Why is the tag debating things about, like, does this tax do blah, 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 blah? Not revenue, not will it fully fund? Is it a revenue source that will sustain the program? And bringing proposals based on the 6 that are being explored that I am unaware that this board has asked for. And I only point, I know that you guys aren't doing it.
So I wonder if it doesn't make sense to get into some of the presentation of, I think some gets at some of what these questions have been for the board to understand. I think many of us have asked why a PEG, why not? I still want to understand why there isn't a connection to the existing advisory groups. But maybe if we get into the presentation and then we can have some more conversation when where there's places that we still don't agree as a board, things need to go. That's part of what I think this whole process is meant to do.
For the record again, Stephen Herrera, Senior Policy Advisor with the Chair on Safety Net Services, which includes Preschool for All, and I use he, him pronouns. Before our presentation, we have the Chair to provide her vision and Jeff Renfro to come and explain the origin story of the tag. So can we call to the dais Jeff Renfro?
Yeah, so I gave some of my comments at the beginning, but I did really want to share. So I think some important documents for the board is the, one of those is the strategic framework for the Preschool for All PAG and TAG, and that really is about what they're supposed to be focusing on in their work, and the TAG specifically, their number one scope of work is providing a report to the board, including recommendations regarding the scheduled tax increase of 0.8% in 2027 and the future revenue requirements to ensure Preschool for All is fully funded. So that is a core part of their work. My understanding, and I think that the presentation will get into it, is some of the workings and the conversation that the technical advisory group members had among themselves in order to be able to fulfill some of their mission is important. I also think that it is really, we have had so many questions about Preschool for All brought up in the community since its passage, and we have seen a very strong effort, immediately from mainstream media and from other sources of trying to kill this program or trying to tear down this program with 1,000 different cuts, right? And so for me, this is a program that has already benefited thousands of children in our county. It is making an impact on our workforce. It is making a difference for small business owners. It is making a difference in school districts. We need that to continue. We need to fulfill the promise of voters to make sure that we are able to build a sustainable program that reaches universal access by 2030. Just like the members of this board, I am incredibly hungry for hearing from the preschool and early learning division about what is it going to take to get to that universal number, both in terms of dollars and programming. If there are obstacles in the current program to reaching universal access, we need to know that. One of the things that has been brought up in conversations that I have had with folks, and both, I would say like from the I think like expected suspects of like people who don't like the tax mechanism of coming from higher income earners, to people who are really concerned about the future of the county as a whole, is this a sustainable revenue mechanism in order to get to universal if we truly are having the people who are paying this tax, and especially the highest income earners who are paying the majority of this tax, if they aren't going to stay here. This is something that voters have supported by a 2-to-1 margin, that this is the revenue mechanism that we need, and I think that this is the most progressive tax that we could have in terms of fairness to everyone who's living in Multnomah County. However, if we are not able to, by 2030, have the tax base that sustains this program at the level it needs to reach universal, that is a problem. So I want to make sure that we are fully considering that, both in the work that the department is doing and in the questions that the TAG is asking as well.
So just a question, were you the one to put the property tax on the table? I'm just like, so it's the first I've ever heard of it, so I'm just curious.
I've never heard of it.
It's actually fairly regressive, because it's not just.
Commissioner, I did not, to answer your question, no, I did not, and I think we are going to get into kind of how this all came up as part of the conversation today, but to answer your question, no, I did not.
Okay, so isn't this a roundtable this is a work session that we can all talk about?
We won't interrupt each other.
And Commissioner, I was asked to give my vision for Preschool for All as part of the presentation. That was literally what I was asked to do by the. So I will just say, just in terms of the program advisory group, one of the things that was important to me is that a technical advisory group, people who are demographers and economists and business people who don't necessarily have expertise in Preschool for All, or in early childhood education, be making decisions about policy. I do think that it was very important to have that as a separate conversation, so that they were not overreaching basically into what the requirements were for the measure that was passed. And so that was this kind of start of the program advisory group to inform that kind of conversation. I do appreciate the conversations around, like, we already have an advisory committee and what's the difference from that, and I expect that we'll get into kind of the different roles of those committees. So that's really, what, just in terms of this conversation, just to set that up.
So I'd just like to say one thing about the technical advisory group, because you said 2027. The reality is the ballot measure summary and explanation says it requires a recommendation from the technical team on whether the 2026 tax increase is necessary to fully fund the program. So there was a recommendation to the commission not to increase the tax and without any sort of recommendation from the technical team, because it hadn't even been formulated. So I just wanted to correct the record that this was something that was supposed to happen before this commission voted in 2026, and I raised the issue then. So it wasn't 2027 in the explanation. So this is why this whole question of what is the plan, how much does it cost, and whether we make decisions before like kicking it down the road or putting like out some other future vote, like we should be sticking to what. Again, this is what voters were told, that there would be a technical team advising us prior to any votes on tax increases. And it also mentions the program advisory committee. So it would be great to get the whole plan for universality, and then also how these different steps inform them, so that we're actually the commission is actually making informed decisions that are coming before us on the universality and also the sustainability of the funding.
Yes, so just to clarify, so the increase in 2027 and the date that the report was due from the technical advisory group was updated by this board in the last calendar year based on conversations and consultation with the preschool and early learning division. And that was passed, I believe, unanimously by the board.
I was there, but I just want to say, when we voted on the 2026 with the tax increase, there was no technical advisory team that had been formulated.
True.
And I raised that issue at the time, and so wasn't 2027. We should stop making decisions about the program that isn't informed by the whole plan and when we're getting to universality.
Okay, thank you. So, Jeff.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Mr. Moore, did you have something? No, okay.
Go for it.
Thank you for the record. I'm Jeff Renfro from the Budget Office. I need to have a cough drop in my mouth to get through this, so I apologize. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the ideas around the formation of the tag and kind of how we ended up here. So originally, when the chair's office asked me to help work on this, I think as a starting point, we took as our two goals to be extremely transparent and to have whatever resulted from this process to be extremely credible with a variety of audiences. So initially, when we were thinking about the tag specifically, decision was made to keep it to a group of extremely technical, the way I described it internally was like everyone on the tag needs to know how to do math, and focusing on economists, demographers, and then in order to help with the credibility of what came out of the recommendations, to have input from the business community, and then also making sure that we had someone with early childhood education experience who could be in the room talking with us to make sure there weren't any sort of wild hairs happening. So then, because we chose to keep that group limited and keep it to a group of people who frankly shouldn't be making recommendations on any programmatic changes because of their area of expertise, we wanted to make sure that at the beginning of the process and at the end of the process, we were adding that in. So we initially started with the work that Laura Media did to make sure that the beginning of the tag's work was grounded in community input. So they were starting from a place of hearing what was most important to the community. Then the other piece that began the tag's work is we had a series of conversations about what are the data points that people in the community are disagreeing about, that the tag wants to come to some sort of consensus or some sort of shared understanding before we start our process. So foremost in my mind at least was, I feel like as a community we kind of have had the same conversation about population over and over again. So we decided let's have our consultants, have Echo Northwest, come in and present information on population sort of sliced and diced in all sorts of different ways so that the tag could have a shared understanding on what the eventual recommendations would be based on. So we went through a series of meetings to define what the desire for that shared understanding would be. We had presentations from Echo Northwest to go through all of that work. Then coming out of that, we started the discussion of what are the specific recommendations or specific mechanisms that the tag might want to explore. And so
why were they in charge of deciding what they wanted to explore?
So I think the idea initially was that the tag would be independent, right? So the tag would be a group of community members who, with a specific expertise, who would review the data. They would make a series of recommendations to the board. I think from the very beginning, even before we convened the group, we started from a point of, I think it's really doubtful that there's going to be some sort of unanimous, we as a group agree on this one thing and we recommend the board do exactly this. So the idea from the beginning was to represent a variety of opinions, but then to give the board a menu of options that they can consider. And the idea behind choosing those options was that we would choose options that sort of highlighted the various policy levers available to you all.
Options to do what?
Well, so options to make any changes to the revenue structure.
where in code does it say that's the purpose? I mean, I would say that that's actually in direct conflict with what the code says the purpose of the tag is.
The way the code is written currently, it's written very narrow, but my understanding is they would, the tag is, initial charge was to determine whether we should have that increase or not by looking at various tax mechanism, various analysis and research and tax mechanisms.
For what end does the code say that they are to work?
So,
this is totally relevant.
Again, code is,
no, I agree.
as it is written, it's very narrow.
So
what?
So
what does the code say?
So the code says that the TAG will provide a report to the board, including recommendations regarding the scheduled tax increase of 0.8, I mean, it's what I read earlier, in 2027, and future revenue requirements to ensure that preschool for all is fully funded. So that is what the code says. It is not, but that is not limiting in terms of the conversation.
The conversation, though, to be fair, and I listened to them, is not centered on what, and I totally am fine with 6 different perspectives and why and all of that. The conversation has not been, and it's even reflected in all of this. What is the right funding mechanisms, even if you want to go beyond the 0.8, which I believe they will give a recommendation on, and I appreciate that, to fully fund the program, which, to be fair, I don't know if they could do because I don't think we have provided them with what fully funded is. I could be wrong. And there are wild assumptions we have to make projecting that far out. I'm respecting that. How does pause tax collection for 3 years meet the mission of the tag?
So let me say, I think you've caught us in kind of like an in-between period here. And so we asked the TAG to submit their ideas about what it is that they wanted to see modeled. And then we've had a series of discussions around, we had the discussion around what is sustainability, and then from early on, we had a discussion about if we were gonna make the criteria around making recommendations, we wouldn't make a recommendation that would result in something that fundamentally changed the program beyond what the public would recognize as what they voted for. So can I just finish that thought? So my guess is, I think because the idea is out there, there's some interest in modeling the moratorium. I don't want to speak for where the TAG will eventually get to, but my guess is that will fail the test of, does this sustainably fund the program in a way that the public would recognize? So just because it's on this list right now, it just means it's what we're going to model and what we're going to explore. It doesn't mean that it's going to be on a list of eventual recommendations.
I assume we're paying for that modeling.
I have a question, this is a technical question, which maybe it's either this or Jenny Madcourt knowing the answer. So the different ones you're going to model, do those need to go back to the voters? So for example, the ones that are on the list, whether it's increasing, decreasing, because it was a voter-approved initiative, or like the property tax, does that all have to go back to?
So the recommendations that will be given by the TAG or the PAG or whoever is going to be making recommendations to the board, that comes before the board for contemplation. Any changes to that need to be done by the board. The board does have the authority to make those changes. However, this board can also decide to refer to the voters any proposed changes. So to go back to the original Preschool for All measure, the Board of Multnomah County Commissioners actually had the authority to institute the the tax on its own. We did not have to go to voters to do that. However, that was something that the board chose to refer to the voters, and the voters then had their say on this. So again, we as a board have authority to make any of those changes. It's absolutely within our authority. However, we do have the choice to refer any changes, should we choose to do so, and choose to make any changes to the voters.
And
I'm sorry, just one.
I was going to ask, and that's true for every option that's listed?
Only those that the board would choose to take any action on. It is up to this board to take any act, to either decide to take action on anything or to refer anything to the voters.
Actually, this is just like, it's not a judgment one way or the other. I'm just trying to clarify. Like, say if the board decided everything on the list we want to advance, the board has the authority to do that, or some of them have to go back out to the voters? Like a property tax, most of the time those have to be approved by voters, so I'm just trying to understand the jurisdictional powers.
Yeah, I don't have that handout here, but I can look at each individual one if I have time and give some opinion. But in general, the Multnomah County Board of Commissioners has reserved to itself the ability to tax without going to the voters.
In any way?
Yes.
Okay, and I just want to have the caveat, though, that the 0.8% increase happens automatically unless the board chooses not to do that.
Yes, I was just trying to, because every jurisdiction I've ever been around, you always had to get the property tax approval, so that's a unique power that the county commission has. Great, thanks. It was just a technical question. It wasn't valued.
So then to go back to process for a second, so I think that brings us up to where we are now, which is the tag. Everyone on the tag was able to put forward ideas. The tag went through a prioritization process. The ranking that you all have seen so far is not final by any means. So we'll go now through a process of discussion around it. I think a great example is I was very surprised that property tax was what they prioritized as the top one. So I think I'm very well equipped to have a conversation with them about the shortcomings of funding a program like this with property tax as a mechanism. So we'll go back through and eventually settle on what's basically the research agenda that we're going to then give to ECHO Northwest. I've been working with ECHO, and the ECHO team has been working really hard to go through the process of looking at this list and figuring out what are the needs around modeling and what data do we need, and like exploring the process of making sure we can get good answers to questions related to these mechanisms. Then once we'll settle on the research agenda, then ECHO will go away. They'll do a bunch of work. They'll come back to the tag, and the tag will iterate through that process. And we'll come up with the series of scenarios. So there's going to be scenarios and then what we're calling sensitivity analysis. So each scenario will then also include a look at, what if our assumptions around income growth are too high or too low? Or what if we pursue the scenario, but then we also incorporated indexing into it? What if we changed our demographic assumptions? So we have, imagine a matrix with sort of all of the different options. After we iterate through that process to get all of this information, then for scenarios that would cause a change to the program, so either a reduction in the amount of revenue that's available or changing in the timing of how the revenue would come in, then that's what we have the PAG for. So we have a group of economists and demographers. We don't want to make those decisions. And then in the work sessions we've already had, you all have asked us, okay, if we pursue this change, what does it do to the program? Our answer so far has been, well, it's really complicated, and I know that's been unsatisfying. So then for each of these scenarios, then the PAG goes through and actually goes through that prioritization process. Because I think the issue we've maybe haven't articulated very well is changes to the program wouldn't necessarily happen in a linear fashion, right? So a little adjustment might suggest one set of programmatic changes, but then going beyond that might suggest a different path depending on kind of how all the pieces work together. So the PAG has expertise in that area. They'd be working really closely with the PEL team and they would come forward with recommendations on how to alter or change the program or change the path of the program in response to those scenarios, so that when we present revenue scenarios to you all, then we have the answers of here is a recommendation on the path forward to the changes to the program. So then all of that comes together in the end, and there'll be a presentation and a report produced by these groups. The idea behind that is, like I said, it's to give you options and to use it as an educational tool, really, for you all, but then also for the public. So we understand what the trade-offs are between these different paths forward. And so there might be things in that final report that are not recommended by the TAG, but to use the moratorium as an example, we want the community to know, like, this is what we think would happen to the program if we had that moratorium. So it would be in the report, but not necessarily one of the recommended paths forward. My guess is the recommendations will, a recommendation might be based on, here is our recommendation that we think prioritizes economic competitiveness in the community. And then here's a recommendation that we think prioritizes.
What does that mean? And why is, in the context of PFA, I'm just trying to understand what that consideration means.
Sure. So I think, if in this case, there might be tension, right, between some of our priorities around, there's clearly a desire to have a progressive tax mechanism, right? And so if the TAG goes through its process and they think that that progressivity of an income tax is doing something that is hindering sort of the long-term economic growth of our community, they might say, and I'm not presupposing this, but it's something that the TAG could do, they might say, we recommend a change in the mechanism in order to prioritize economic competitiveness. In another case, they might say, we want to prioritize the progressivity of the income tax mechanism, so if that's our top priority, we might recommend this other path forward. Again, it's to give you all options to weigh.
Is it okay if I ask questions? I don't want to stop other people. Okay. Okay, related to that, again, I don't think anyone's arguing against explore things outside of just the recommendation related to the 0.8. I don't even have that much of a problem of, like, I don't want to spend a tremendous amount of money for things that I think are, like, don't really require a tremendous amount of analysis to know that probably pausing the collection of the tax would make fully funding incredibly difficult. Like, please don't spend tens of thousands of dollars on that. I do have questions related to, one, what I have asked, and I did, having watched the meetings of the TAG, feel pretty misrepresented in saying that I didn't bring questions forward when I sent an entire 3-page memo about what I was hoping that the TAG would do, which I then was told no to. So I did give my input on that. Was not taken. I have feelings about if we're to be advising the commission. I still fundamentally don't understand the context that these ideas are being evaluated in. And I say that, one, because I think, like, means testing co-pays for a 10-hour program. There's the dollar that may or may not produce, and I don't know how you're going to do that without having expertise on what happens when you ask parents to pay copay, and I highly recommend you actually hear from providers what happens with the copay on employment-related daycare, because it is often becomes a huge barrier to families. But that is a profound policy conversation of, like, if we want to do that or not. It is not a dollar alone conversation, and I frankly am wildly uncomfortable with a tax group who don't have expertise, maybe with the exception of Dana, of like how childcare really works as an industry and with families, and the cost of administering this. You probably could get the cost of administering things, but like for me, that recommendation has to be profoundly influenced by the policy advisory committee. Like, no,
I agree, and I will say that's my question. So
Which
I
is
do
fair.
want both the dollar amount and the policy piece, and that's where I think it's, you all can talk about where and how these will intersect. I agree with a number of folks who have already said, and I know you've heard me say this a bunch of times, that you have some expertise on the existing advisory group that reports to the department, and I still don't see any feedback loops to those groups that I'll continue to harp on. I think we need to. I don't understand why in the timeline we don't include them at all. I'm fine that the PAG exists, but then again, these other groups also exist, and I think that it's a big miss if we don't ask for their expertise on these bigger policy questions.
I'm also curious, and I have yet to get a finding. I did bring up questions about conflict of interest because, and again, listening to the conversation, I'm not really sure our tag is value aligned on the idea that they're here to give us which they can have different views of, but the best possible recommendation for how the revenue, and it's, again, it speaks to the 0.8% rise or not, but let's just say the needed revenue or mechanism of revenue for this program. I don't believe every member of the TAG is actually committed to having universal pre-K. And I don't just and I listened, so I am actually basing that off of what people said. But we also have people on the TAG who, before the TAG first met, were on the news speaking on behalf of a client who paid them that it is vitally important for the economy of Portland to not be paying high income tax. I just don't understand how you can have people giving recommendations on what the right funding mechanism for the TAG is when they are paid by a group and was the spokesperson, which is different than doing an analysis, which our contract with Echo Northwest is not for them to weigh in, but to do analysis, and I appreciate that. But to have a member of the TAG who is paid to advocate a position in direct opposition to what I believe is the purpose of the TAG. Like, where is the public confidence in these recommendations? They're not studying things that this board asked them to look at, some of which are like wildly politically not feasible, not to mention there's no way I'm going to support a regressive tax, but I'm one vote, and that's fine if to get recommendations I don't support, but like some of these do not pass a political smell test. They certainly could benefit high-income earners, which, again, unclear why that's a priority of the TAG. I guess that's assuming that the world crumbles if rich people move. I'm unaware that we've said, please make this more regressive. Please look at options that would potentially gut this program. So I looked at the chart. I don't remember what page it is. who is the PEG advising? I mean, who's the TAG advising? The PEG, I don't even know what that is. But the TAG in code advises who?
The board. They will put forth a recommendation to the board, and it's the board's decision to do more work and do more research or to make their own recommendation. But the TAG was put in place to provide a recommendation to the board.
So I would assume, ideally, that you would want the work of the TAG to reflect the questions that the board has and are in line with the direction the board is interested in. Is that correct?
Yes.
Then why was this board not involved in a public work session? And I think because we clearly don't have time, that we need to do that, in what information we need related to evaluating some of these. Like, I absolutely am fine with, I think some of these are very valuable. And I might be outvoted, and others say, actually, I do want to know that. But we're talking about $500,000, well, $600 with the PEG contract, $600,000 of county dollars being spent on this process to potentially provide us information that none of us care about and are not even viable.
Thank you, Commissioner. I do want to just, again, go back to the strategic framework. So one of the charges to the TAG is to develop a model to forecast various tax policy proposals from the Board of Commissioners and TAG members. And the scenarios that were listed may explore options including tax credits or offsets for those who pay the tax but don't use the services, index tax thresholds, copays, so and et cetera, some other things. Those, some of those were developed because of the conversations that this body has had publicly around Preschool for All over the summer, as well as questions and ideas that were submitted by the offices to Stephen and the division on that. So if there are additional things that this board would like to see, we can either obviously have that conversation or those. But that was some of the proposals came directly from what has been submitted by
Indexing didn't even make the cutoff until pushback happened. Like, let's be real. That didn't happen.
So I think it might be helpful, just in the interest of time, to just get some insight from Eco Northwest around the process. Phase 1, how we got here, and then the process ahead, because I think there are some assumptions around how some decisions were made. And so I just want to hand it over to Brittany Bagent.
We're out of time. I totally appreciate what you're saying and where you're going, because I agree. I think we need to actually have the conversation of what's going on, but I also know that we had a 12:30 stop, and I just want to ask that when we come back to this, that we start here, because I think it's really important. There may still be questions that we have or things that we want to insert in the process, but I didn't feel like we got there today to actually say this is where I'd like to see something different. So that's what I would ask, if we could really, as a board, agree to start there so that we can get into the details.
Before we wrap up, can we just spend maybe 1 minute apiece with what we hope to see going forward? Because I would like to do that.
What we'd like to see from the TAG or in these conversations?
Just anything. I mean, I'm going to put on the table a couple things. One, I just want to correct the record. A property tax has to go to the voters. So the commission can't just.
Yeah, she didn't have the list, so I just gave that.
Right, so I'm just. So
I clarified that, so thank you. So for ad valorem property taxes, that can be referred to the voters by the county, and it would be in a levy.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that's clear, because earlier it was like, hey, we can do any of these. Jeff, in the context of sustainability the other day, of like how do you create a sustainable program, you mentioned that you had a series of assumptions that you were using in order to come up with like what that would be. And I would like to know what those are, because this goes back fundamentally as like, what is the program? Because there's the program that's in the ballot measure, the voter-approved ballot measure, and then there's a program we're offering. And there's some differences. And so I would like to understand what the assumptions are, like sustainable of what the voters approved or how the program's evolved. I don't need it right now, but I'll want that. Also want an update on the demographics. This is something I've asked for over a year. We don't use real demographic numbers because it shows it just doesn't change over 30 years, and we know it will. And then the one refinement, I don't need an answer now, but that one of the mechanisms that we have on that's being explored is the credits. And I know the Commissioner Singleton put on the table Multnomah County residents who pay it but don't have access, or they, not Multnomah County residents, but obviously can't access the program because they're not Multnomah County residents. I had asked at one point as well, and this is something that will be diminishing over time, but Multnomah County residents who pay the tax and have applied for a slot and haven't gotten it, because I think I was like, if we're going to do that for out-of-county residents, we certainly should do it for the county residents who are paying the tax. And again, we know that's going to decline as we go to universality, but I would ask that that be looked at as part of the credits bucket. And this is maybe goes back to the assumptions, but the ballot measure also says we're going to offer potentially half day or not every day of the week to be more fitting for what parents want. Like, we can't assume that parents want 5 days of preschool or that they want 10 hours. So as part of your assumptions, I'd like to understand what those assumptions are based on, what the mix is, because that obviously totally drives the cost. Thank you.
Yeah, for me personally, I agree with Commissioner Moyer, just as far as direction from the board to the tag, and then also getting updated as far as the work that you're working on. I've shared with Stephen, he's been extremely proactive as far as access and outcomes. That's been a huge focus of ours, and just the impact that it's having in the district. And then I'm looking forward to the conversation come December regarding what is that number as far as universality. So thank you.
I think, well, one, I want to appreciate that y'all came here and have sat here and taken notes and listened to all of this, but didn't actually get to do what you were hoping to do. So just thank you. I know it's a lot of your time. So Chair, before we came to work session, you mentioned maybe having some space next week to have some of this just because I've heard a couple of folks reference the December work session or briefing, I forget which is next. So it would be helpful to know, are we going to make some time on next week, and then we can work to see who's available to do that. But I do think it would be really helpful for us to actually have the presentation that you all prepared. I think it gets to a lot of what I'm hearing from other board members, and it will give us the ability to be more specific with our feedback. I think what you're hearing today is some frustration that this has kind of been a long time coming for us to get to engage to this level. So again, I appreciate the grace for us to have this conversation today, but I do think you all have some really good information to share that will help us get to exactly what we're looking for and give some more concrete direction for the tag.
Yeah, thank you. And there's been a lot of work that went into putting the presentation together, both from our consultants, but also the division as well. And so I do want to recognize that, so thank you for that. So what we were looking at, so we don't have a board briefing next week because of Veterans Day holiday, and we have a full agenda on the 13th. So we were actually looking at starting early on Tuesday, November 18th. But I will consult with Stacy and Sarah after this to see if there are things that we can move around to help facilitate, and then also check people's availability and schedule of coming back to the board. But really, so either next week, but no later than like the Tuesday after that. Okay. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Commissioner Mori, did you have anything you wanted to put else?
I feel like I said more than my fair share. But yeah, I am looking forward to your presentation. I'm really just wanting to make sure that what you're working on is of value, to the commission. I'm also I do want to make sure that I have a better understanding of the scope of your contracts. What is the products and expectations, and then how best can the commission be more involved so that it is going to be of greatest benefit toward a final product that we really answer some important questions for us.
And and I will just share, like, the path to universality is a huge piece, and I know that this has been raised like many times by many people and with the departments and with this, because we have to know that answer. But it's also, for me, like the important thing through this whole process is that we get to a end work product that this board feels confident in being able to take action on. That ultimately, there's a timeline there, and it talks about like this summer and late spring or summer and late summer. Like if we want to take any action, we need to do that by next August. So I want to make sure both the timeline, the material, the information given gives this board the things that we need in order to make those decisions. I will say, so one, like feeling confident, like yes, a 0.8% that would automatically happen does allow us to get to universal access. We need to feel confident on that, because otherwise we're like, it needs to be more, it needs to be less, or we don't feel comfortable raising it more than that, so we're going to have to make these decisions about the programs. Like that ultimately is the goal of all of this. So I really appreciate the conversation today. I really appreciate Commissioner Singleton for you bringing this forward and having this opportunity. Unfortunately, we didn't have as much time to get into things, and maybe we would have run out of time anyway, which I think would probably have happened even if we had more time. And we're looking forward to continuing this conversation very shortly with both a continuation of this work session, but then also coming back in December for that Path to Universality briefing. So thanks, everyone. That concludes our business for today. There being no further business, we are adjourned.